You place your keys on the table. You hear the quiet clink as they land. You even glance back as you walk away. Something about the moment feels ordinary, certain, anchored. But later, when you return, they're gone. You check your pockets, then the couch, then the floor beneath. Again and again, you trace the scene. But nothing. Then hours pass, and they're back. Not under the couch, not wedged in a shoe, but in the exact place you swear you left them, untouched, unmoved, as if reality simply hit pause and resumed. This happens more often than people admit. A spoon vanishes from a kitchen drawer. A sock disappears from a closed suitcase. A phone you just held ends up under a blanket across the room. Most of us laugh it off. We blame fatigue. Say, "I must be losing it." But in quiet moments, a question lingers. What if you're not? What if you did put the keys there? What if no one moved them? And what if reality glitched? Psychologists are quick with explanations. The most common is human error. Our brains are efficient, not flawless. They skip steps, fill gaps, make assumptions. You thought you placed the keys on the table, but maybe you paused mid-action, set them on a shelf instead, and forgot the detour entirely. Or maybe you overlooked them, eyes scanning the same spot again and again, while your brain quietly filtered them out. This is called attentional blindness. If your mind doesn't expect to see something, it often won't, even when your eyes pass right over it. Especially under stress, or when we're emotionally scattered, our senses distort. Not out of failure, but out of survival. There's also dissociation, the quiet drifting of the self, where the body acts, but the mind doesn't register. You carry the item, place it somewhere else, but the memory never forms. It feels like magic because the in-between moment never existed for you. Still, some events stretch beyond even these models. What if you live alone? What if you triple-check, walk away, come back, and still nothing? Until there it is. Not misplaced, but reappeared. In plain sight. That's when stories begin to reach into folklore. Across cultures, there are whispers of mischievous spirits, trickster forces that hide and return things for amusement. Brownies, domovoi, kobolds, they don't haunt. They tease. You speak aloud, "Okay, keys, you've had your fun." And they return, as if listening. From a paranormal lens, this is called displacement. Objects phasing in and out, slipping between layers of reality, or momentarily ceasing to exist. Some invoke quantum language, though true quantum mechanics doesn't work this way. Still, fringe theorists play with the metaphor, suggesting that just as particles blink in and out, maybe, just maybe, macroscopic objects can too. Scientifically, it's a stretch. At our scale, those quantum effects cancel out. Keys don't tunnel through dimensions, but the feeling remains. Like a crack in the fabric of the known. Even in simulation theory, people search for meaning. Maybe the object didn't load. The system missed a frame, and the universe had to refresh. It sounds far-fetched until it happens to you again and again. A place, a house, a particular room where things vanish, then return. Always subtly, always silently. Some tie it to emotional energy, grief, stress, intense longing. As if consciousness bleeds into the physical, bending the edges of the world in ways we can't yet measure. Others simply observe with a kind of reverent confusion, because at the heart of it, this isn't about science or spirits. It's about the limits of being human. Perception is not truth. Memory is not a recording. Your mind is a storyteller, trying to keep the world coherent. And every once in a while, the story slips. Your keys are gone. But you know, you remember. And maybe, just maybe, you were right. Bears. That's how it was spelled. You're sure of it. You read those books as a kid. You remember the name clearly. Berenstain, with an ein, like Einstein. Then one day, you see the books again, and something's off. It's Berenstain, with an A. You check multiple copies, books, videos, old commercials, all of them. Every single one says Berenstain. It's never been Berenstain. Not in any physical form. You search photos. Still Stain. And now, doubt creeps in. Is your memory faulty? Or is something else at play? This is the Mandela Effect. The name comes from Fiona Broome, a writer who, in the early 2010s, shared a vivid memory. Nelson Mandela had died in prison in the 1980s. She recalled the funeral, the mourning across South Africa, the headlines. Except, Mandela didn't die until 2013. She wasn't alone. Others had the same memory, detailed, confident, precise, yet verifiably false. That tension between what we remember and what actually happened became the heart of what we now call the Mandela Effect. It's not simple forgetfulness. It's collective misremembering, and it feels eerie, unsettling, like reality shifted when no one was looking. You're not forgetting where you placed your keys. You're remembering a version of the world that no longer seems to exist. There are countless examples. People remember the Monopoly man having a monocle. He doesn't. Never has. They remember a 1990s movie called Shazam, starring comedian Sinbad as a genie. That movie doesn't exist. There is a movie called Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal, but no known film with Sinbad in a genie costume. People have searched for years. Some even offered money for a lost VHS copy. Still, nothing. Another example? The famous Star Wars line. Everyone remembers Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father." But the actual line? No, I am your father. It's subtle, but deeply jarring for those who grew up quoting it. It feels like a revision, like someone altered the script after the fact. Brand names, too, fall into the Mandela Effect. People remember Febreze with 2 E's, Febreze. It's actually spelled F-E-B-R-E-Z-E. They remember Oscar Mayer as M-E-E-R, but it's spelled Mayer. People swear they saw the old versions. Some even remember singing the jingles. But when they search for proof, none of it is there. So what causes this? The most grounded answer is memory failure. Human memory isn't a tape recorder. It doesn't play back events as they happened. It reconstructs, fills in gaps, and leans on pattern and familiarity. If you saw a book title dozens of times as a child, your brain might have quietly corrected it to match what it expected. Berenstein sounds familiar. It resembles names like Einstein. So over time, that version takes hold, even if it's wrong. Then there's suggestion. When one person points out a potential discrepancy, others might remember it that way too. This is especially powerful in online communities. A single comment can ripple, thread by thread, video by video, until thousands of people are convinced they remember the same false version. Not because they're lying, but because the brain craves consensus. It wants to feel correct, to belong. Psychologists call this confabulation, when the brain fills memory gaps with plausible but inaccurate details. You might remember your childhood bedroom being larger than it was, or the color of your grandparents' house being different than in old photographs. Memory drifts. It mutates to match emotion, familiarity, and personal story. But here's where it gets strange. Some people don't think the Mandela Effect is just faulty memory. They think it points to something deeper, a fundamental instability in reality itself. They ask, what if these memories are from another timeline? A universe where Mandela did die in the 1980s, where Sinbad did star in Shazam, where the Monopoly Man did wear a monocle? And somehow, we crossed over. These ideas lean on quantum mechanics, specifically, the many worlds interpretation. Every decision, every possible outcome, branches off into a new universe. In one, you turned left. In another, you didn't. If infinite timelines exist, what if some memories are bleed-throughs from alternate versions of reality? There's no scientific proof, but for many, the explanation feels oddly satisfying. Others turn to simulation theory. What if we're inside a vast computational system? Then the Mandela Effect could be a glitch, an update, a software patch that overwrote older files. The program used to render Berenstain. Now it renders Berenstain. Your brain's cache holds the old version, but the system shows you something new. Again, no evidence, just metaphor. But the metaphor helps when logic fails, because what really drives the Mandela Effect is unease. If your memory of a children's book can be wrong, what else are you misremembering? What else never happened the way you recall? It opens a hole, not just in memory, but in trust. If reality is this fragile, what can you count on? That's why the Mandela Effect isn't just interesting, it's haunting. It leads people to gather. Compare notes, track patterns, Reddit threads, TikToks, YouTube documentaries. Some are skeptics. Some are certain they lived through a rupture in time. What began as misremembering becomes a worldview, a movement, a mystery. The Mandela Effect is a mirror. It reflects how memory works, how minds connect, and how we cope when certainty collapses. You remember Berenstain. You always will. but every piece of evidence says you're wrong. And that gap, between the internal and the external, between memory and fact, is where the Mandela Effect lives. And once you notice it, you begin to see it everywhere. You're walking down the street when something strange catches your eye in the sky. A bird. But something's off. It's not flapping, not gliding, not rising or falling. It's just hanging. Still, mid-air. A pigeon, maybe, or a sparrow, suspended in the sky like a paused frame in a video. No wing motion, no gliding arc, no sound of air cutting through feathers. It's simply there, still, weightless, frozen. Seconds pass, then minutes, and the bird remains locked in place, as if gravity and time have stepped out of the scene. Some people report seeing insects like this too. A fly hovering motionless in front of their face. No wing blur, no twitch, no motion. Just floating, suspended in defiance of physics. In these moments, the world feels broken, like some invisible gear inside reality has jammed. You look around, expecting someone else to react. But no one does. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the bird shifts, flaps, and flies off. The moment ends. But the feeling doesn't. Most people describe the experience the same way: eerie, uncanny, off. Not like an optical illusion, not like a trick of the light, but like a real-time glitch. Something in the natural order halts, then resets. Of course, there are grounded explanations. One is visual parallax. If a bird is flying directly toward or away from you, and wind resistance is just right, it may appear still. With no nearby object like a tree or building for reference, your depth perception stumbles. The bird appears to float, even if it's subtly in motion. But witnesses often say there was a background. The sky, wires, buildings, clear, visible, unmoving. And the bird stayed still relative to all of it. Another explanation is hovering behavior. Birds like kestrels and hummingbirds can hover, beating their wings rapidly to maintain position. But even they produce sound, blur, vibration, and they can't hold perfectly still for long. When people describe these sightings, they often say the wings weren't just fast, they weren't moving at all. As for insects like gnats or flies, hovering is more common. They can balance mid-air using tiny wing shifts, especially indoors. But again, frozen wings, no motion blur, no buzz or movement at all. That's not just improbable. It's biologically bizarre. Another possibility is a visual processing error, something happening not in the sky, but in the brain. Your eyes constantly feed data to your brain, but that stream isn't continuous. It's stitched together, smoothed, interpolated. Sometimes that stitching falters. A burst of bright light, a blink at the wrong moment. Eye fatigue. A disruption in the visual feed might cause your mind to pause the image mid-motion, like a video buffering. This can create what's called temporal lag, a moment where an object continues moving, but your brain didn't get the update. This is also related to saccades, quick eye movements between fixed points. During a saccade, the brain suppresses visual input to avoid blur. If a bird moves during that micro gap, the brain holds the last scene frame, appearing as a hovering snapshot, a moving object momentarily held in stillness. There's also the stroboscopic effect. If a moving object is illuminated by flickering light, like a fan under fluorescent bulbs, it can appear frozen. In rare natural conditions, such as near certain street lamps at dawn or dusk, a bird might pass through a zone where the flicker syncs with its wing beat. This could cause the illusion of perfect stillness. But again, this is rare, and doesn't explain the phenomenon in full daylight, in an open sky, far from artificial light. Some reject all of these rational models. They say what they saw was not illusion or brain lag. They felt the freeze, viscerally, observed it consciously, and watched it persist longer than any mental glitch should. That's when the theories take a turn. Some call it a glitch in the matrix. If our world is a simulation, then these moments are rendering errors, like a frozen NPC in a game. The system drops a frame. The animation locks. The object, bird, bug, whatever, gets stuck mid-air until reality catches up. Others talk of localized time slips, where time slows or pauses in a small pocket of space. The bird isn't hovering, it's trapped in a different flow of time. Maybe the wind, the gravity, the air molecules around it all stall together. These theories stray from known physics. But for those seeking explanations beyond the rationale, they feel closer to the truth. Psychologists offer one more idea: apophenia, the tendency to perceive significance in randomness. When your mind sees something it doesn't expect, it tags it as meaningful. If you stare into the sky and catch a rare posture, your brain might inflate its strangeness, recording the event as far more extraordinary than it was. But none of these explanations, rational or speculative, fully erase the feeling, that primal discomfort, that flicker of doubt. Because reality is supposed to be consistent. When a bird floats without flapping, without effort, without blur, that consistency is broken. You don't forget that sight. You replay it. You search your memory for signs that you were mistaken. Was it caught on a wire? A drone? A trick of light? But deep down, you know what you saw, and no answer quite satisfies. Because sometimes, reality doesn't just bend, it pauses. You forgot to fall. You've driven this route 100 times. You know the turnoff by heart. The coffee shop on the corner. Then 2 traffic lights. Then that narrow street you always take to avoid the main road. But today, the corner is empty. The coffee shop is gone. No boarded windows, no rubble, no construction signs. Just an old beige office building, its walls blank and clean, as if it had always been there, as if nothing else had ever stood in that spot. You slow down, check your GPS. It shows the office building too. No mention of the coffee shop. You double back, thinking maybe you missed it. Still nothing. Then the narrow street is gone too. Where there used to be an opening, there's now a long, unbroken wall. You blink. You hesitate. Did you take the wrong road? But no, everything else looks right. The same stoplight, the same bus bench, just no coffee shop, no side street, no familiar shortcut. The layout has changed, or worse, your memory has. This experience isn't rare. People describe entire streets vanishing. Alleys they once used now blocked by buildings. Plazas replaced with parking lots. Neighborhoods that feel slightly off. A mailbox on the wrong side. A fence taller than it should be. A tree they swore was there last week, missing. When they ask the locals, they hear the same thing. It's always been like this. No one's heard of the street. No one remembers the missing building. They act like you're imagining it. The most grounded explanation? Misremembering. Your brain stores locations flexibly. It doesn't capture every detail. Just anchor points, corners, turns, landmarks, approximate angles. That's usually enough. But when something changes, even subtly, the brain tries to patch the map. Maybe that bakery you loved was on the next street, not the corner. Maybe that narrow alley you cut through was really a path behind a fence. You misremembered. It happens, but not always. Some people insist on the memory. They describe full buildings, brick patterns, neon signs, smells from the bakery kitchen. These aren't vague impressions. They're emotional imprints. You're not forgetting a landmark. You're remembering a place that no longer exists, or never did. There's a term for this: source confusion. Your memory may be accurate, but the origin is wrong. You saw the street in a movie, or dreamed it, or imagined it as a child, but your brain placed it on your real-world map. And now it's there, fully integrated, undeniably familiar, until it vanishes. Another explanation? Unnoticed change. Cities evolve. Shops close. Buildings repaint. Roads get repurposed. Sometimes you miss the transition. And when you finally notice, it feels like the world shifted overnight. A gas station becomes a laundromat. An alley becomes a driveway. It's not supernatural. It's just unnoticed renovation. But then there are stories that push further. People say they visited the street last week, and it's gone today. They describe massive changes. Not one building, but whole blocks rearranged. A curved road becomes straight. A residential zone becomes industrial. These aren't old memories. They're recent. And when no one else remembers, the feeling turns from confused to unsettled. Some call this a reality shift, a parallel layer of your city, almost identical, but slightly wrong. You stepped into a version where your road never existed. You search for proof, old maps, satellite images, local archives, but nothing backs you up. The world insists. It's always been this way, but your memory whispers otherwise. Then there's the idea of liminal spaces, places that exist at the edges of perception. An empty parking garage, a dead-end street you walked once at dusk, a quiet alley behind your old school. They feel fragile, dreamlike. You remember them clearly, until you go back, and they're gone. Some say these places never anchor fully into consciousness. They drift in and out, too unstable for long-term memory, too slippery for shared reality. Others bring up simulation theory again. If the world is rendered only as needed, maybe unused places unload to save resources. A shortcut you haven't taken in years? Erased from active memory. A coffee shop with no visitors? Despawned. Next time you pass through, it's just not there. And no one else remembers. because no one else needed it to exist. It sounds absurd, but that's what people feel, that reality was edited behind the scenes. More metaphorically, the loss of a familiar place reminds us how fragile our sense of permanence really is. The world feels stable because we remember it that way. But remove one piece, a turnoff, a bench, a familiar window, and the illusion shatters. You trust your memory. You trust your surroundings. And when either betrays you, it shakes your reality. Sometimes it's personal. That missing building wasn't just brick and mortar. It was where you met someone, where you waited every morning, where something important happened. When it's gone, it's not just disorienting, it's grief. You try to confirm it, ask others, show sketches, check Google Maps. Some vaguely agree, most don't. No one matches your clarity, and you stand there, alone, on a street that looks almost right, but not quite. The explanations help, but none of them resolve the feeling. That road existed. You're sure. You remember every step. And yet, it's gone. Like the world took one quiet step to the left and never looked back. You can't walk there now, not in the way you did before. You're walking down the street. Cars pass. People talk. The city hums around you. Nothing special is happening. But then, something shifts. The noise begins to soften. The motion around you slows. Not literally, but in your perception. It's like stepping just outside of time, without leaving your body. Everything feels still, not frozen, but settled, balanced. In that brief moment, you feel deeply grounded, as if time stretched just enough for you to stand beside it and watch. Thoughts that had been racing fall away. Clutter dissolves. You understand where you are, who you are, and, perhaps for the first time in days, what actually matters. There's no drama to it, no warning, no build-up, just stillness. Clean, silent clarity. This is sudden clarity. It doesn't ask your permission. It doesn't wait for silence or solitude. It appears in chaos just as easily as it does in calm. You might be brushing your teeth, waiting in a checkout line, watching a sliver of light move across a wall. The trigger is rarely dramatic, but the feeling is unmistakable. It's like looking through glass that was once fogged, and suddenly seeing everything clearly. In that moment, you are no longer tangled in old regrets or future worries. You're just here, entirely. You don't think. You know. You don't explain. You understand. The strange part? These moments never last long. They slip by in seconds, maybe a minute, rarely more. But the impact? That stays. Even after the noise of life returns, even as tension trickles back in, something inside you stays quiet. Like an ember, still glowing, carried silently forward. People describe it in all sorts of ways. Some say it feels like waking from a long sleep. Others say it's like zooming out, seeing not just the present moment, but their entire life from above. Suddenly, things make sense. Not just the day's worries, but everything. The past, the choices, the patterns, the blind spots. The puzzle fits together, just once, then scatters again. There's neuroscience behind it too. The brain usually filters information constantly. It limits input to protect you from sensory overload. You're rarely fully present. You're planning, remembering, multitasking. But sometimes, the filters drop. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that calculates, plans, controls, quiets down, and in its absence, your raw attention returns. You see, not with your eyes alone, but with your awareness. Even shadows on a floor can feel profound. Leaves twitching in a breeze can bring tears. Why? Because your mind isn't doing, it's being. Sometimes this clarity comes after stress, when the pressure finally breaks, after crying, after laughter, after silence so deep it presses against your ribs. Your mind unclenches, and from that cleared space, truth rises. Clean, uncomplicated, unforced. Other times, it's awe. You see the ocean, or the stars, or sunlight piercing storm clouds in a perfect golden ray. And for just a breath, you stop trying to fix, stop trying to solve, and just witness. That pause is where clarity lives. Some feel it during danger. A crash behind them, a car swerving ahead. Time slows. But instead of panic, they feel calm, hyper-focused, aware. The brain's survival systems sharpen the senses. But the effect isn't just biological, it's existential. You see what matters, instantly. Others feel it in conversation. Not about deep things, maybe something ordinary. And then, a sentence lands. A truth, small but undeniable, said aloud. The room goes still. The world pauses, and you see yourself with unusual honesty. No self-help book could have taught it. You felt it. You knew it. Writers, mystics, and philosophers have chased this moment for centuries. The Stoics called it a flash of reason. Zen calls it satori. Not enlightenment, but a brief, piercing clarity. A sudden awakening before the dream returns. Even Carl Jung wrote of these glimpses, moments where the unconscious rises and shows its shape before retreating again. But you don't need a label to know it. You felt it. It's that instant when the noise stops, and all that's left is a quiet yes. Not a victory, not an answer to shout, just stillness, a full breath, a knowing. What's strange is that it comes when you stop chasing it. You didn't force it. You didn't figure it out. You let go, and it slipped in. It might be your brain sinking. It might be an old conflict resolving without words. But the contrast is what makes it powerful. Because most of the time, we live in fragments. We rush. We react. We carry bits of the past and guesses about the future, but rarely the whole picture. Sudden clarity gives us the whole, even if just once. You see your habits, your fears, your cravings, not with judgment, but with understanding. Like reading a map that's finally been redrawn with clean, honest lines. And then it fades. The horns return. Your inbox fills. The clock ticks louder. You go back to the day, to the fixing, the managing. But something inside you changed. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. You may not be able to explain it, but you remember it, and that's enough, because now you know there's a moment behind the fog. You saw it once, and even if it never comes again, you walk forward knowing that it could. A thin white line, about 2 inches long, raised slightly, smooth, pale. It looks exactly like a healed scar, but you don't remember cutting yourself there. You press it. No pain, just skin. Old skin. Healed skin. You try to recall. Was it an accident? A scrape? A childhood injury? Surgery? Nothing comes to mind. You ask a family member, a partner, a friend. They shake their head. No, they don't remember it either. You shrug. Forget about it. Move on. A week later, you glance again. It's gone. The scar, that was so real yesterday, has vanished. No redness, no line. Not even the faintest trace remains. Just smooth, even skin where something should be. You check again. Still nothing. And then, days, maybe months later, it's back. Same place, same size, same quiet sense of familiarity. But no explanation, no memory, no injury to tie it to. This isn't common, but it isn't unheard of. People report scars that appear, then vanish, then return. Marks that should come from trauma, but don't. Scars they've had for years disappear slowly or overnight. Then one morning, they're staring back again. The strangest part isn't just the scar. It's the absence of cause. The most rational explanation? A memory lapse. You might have scratched yourself in your sleep, bumped something hard, had a mild skin reaction. You didn't notice at the time. The injury healed. The scar remained. But because you never registered the wound, the scar feels foreign. The opposite happens too. Scars do fade, especially small ones. Surface-level wounds. If you're not examining your skin daily, a slow fade feels like a sudden vanishing. But some reports, they don't fit that timeline. They defy that logic. A raised scar, thick, textured, visible, shouldn't disappear fast. Surgical scars, old trauma scars, they don't usually vanish, then reappear, out of nowhere. And yet, some say that's exactly what happened. The knee scar from childhood, gone for years. Back one morning without warning. A burn on the fingertip, faded in adolescence. Returns during a stressful week in adulthood. No new burn, no trauma, just the same scar. Resurfaced. That's when it stops feeling like coincidence and starts to feel unsettling. Could it be medical? Yes. In some cases. Dermographism, for example, can cause raised welts or lines when skin is lightly scratched. They look like scars, but fade within minutes or hours. Hypertrophic scars and keloids can also behave oddly. They grow, they fade, they change color, based on stress, inflammation, weather, or even hormonal shifts. Some autoimmune conditions affect scar tissue, causing it to reinflate or fade temporarily. But not all cases fit the medical textbook. Not all behaviors make sense under the microscope. Some say, I had this scar for decades, and one day it just disappeared. No ointment, no surgery, no conscious effort. It simply reversed itself. Others report something even stranger, a scar that looks exactly like one they dreamed of. A mark from childhood imagination, now physically present on the body. That kind of experience opens up another door, one the rational mind doesn't like to enter. The psychological explanation? Stress. The body reflects the mind. Under pressure, people scratch, pick, rub, or press without realizing it. These micro-injuries leave subtle marks. Later, you see the scar but forget the action. In dissociative states, it's even more complicated. Some people injure themselves or are injured, but never encode the memory. The mind is there, but the moment never registers. So when a scar shows up, it feels foreign, disconnected. Trauma, too, leaves echoes in the body. People with PTSD sometimes feel pain where no wound exists. They report phantom sensations, cold lines, burning skin, even visible marks that seem to have no physical origin. The medical field struggles with these because they aren't consistent. They don't follow the normal rules. And when a scar returns, in the same shape and place as a long-forgotten injury, it hits deeper than skin. Then there's the theory of misattribution. Maybe the scar was always there. Maybe your brain just never noticed it. We see what we expect. We filter reality. So maybe your attention shifts. You focus on your arm. Suddenly, there it is. Not new, just seen. Later, you stop looking. It disappears again. Not physically, but mentally. But not everyone is satisfied. With these explanations, some believe the scar means more, that it's a message, a mark from something unseen, a symbol, a memory that didn't belong to this lifetime. In ancient traditions, scars and birthmarks were believed to reveal how a person died in a past life. In esoteric circles, some say these are echoes from alternate timelines. A version of you, in another thread of reality, carried that wound. Now, in some strange moment of alignment, you do too. Others invoke simulation theory. If this world is rendered dynamically, only loading what we observe, then scars, like forgotten rooms, only appear when noticed. Maybe your arm wasn't fully rendered for months, and when the system refreshed, it flipped a different version of your body. Far-fetched? Perhaps. But it matches what people describe. That feeling, not of injury, but of discontinuity, of your own body, breaking the rules. Because when a part of you changes without cause or explanation, It shakes something deeper. You trust your skin, your body, your sense of time. When that trust slips, even for a moment, you start to wonder, if scars can come and go without reason, what else might change while you're not looking? You press the scar again. It's there, pale, silent, unfamiliar. You don't know where it came from. You don't know if it will stay. But one thing's certain, it doesn't just mark your skin, it marks your certainty. And once that's been scarred, nothing feels quite the same. The TV's off. No one's outside. It's quiet. Still. Then, you hear it. Your name. Soft, but unmistakable. Not a noise. Not static. Not a thump. Not a creak. A voice. Clear. Brief. Familiar. Or not. Male. Female. You can't quite tell. But it says your name. Only once. You turn. Nothing. The hallway is empty. No footsteps. No movement. No shadows where there shouldn't be. You stand still. You wait. You listen. But the voice doesn't return. Still, you know what you heard, and you're not alone. This happens, more often than most will admit. People hear their names when no one's around, at night, while doing laundry, walking alone, even in crowds, where no one's speaking to them. It's short. It rarely repeats, but it's clear enough to make you stop and look around. Sometimes it's a whisper. Other times, a steady speaking voice. And most of the time, it comes from nowhere. The simplest explanation? Auditory memory. Your brain stores voices, just like it stores faces. When someone you know says your name enough times, their voice becomes embedded in your neural circuits. In quiet moments, when your mind drifts, when your senses relax, your brain might echo that sound. It doesn't feel like a thought. It feels external. You hear it, even if it came from within. This happens most when you're tired, stressed, alone, when input is low, when silence surrounds you. The brain tries to fill in the gaps, a flicker in your mental systems, a memory misfiring, and you hear your name, because that's the word you're most conditioned to react to. Another theory? Auditory pareidolia, the same way people see shapes in clouds or faces in the dark. You hear meaning in meaningless sound. The wind moves through trees, the hum of a fridge, the whir of a fan, and suddenly it shapes into syllables. Your name. Not because it's there, but because your mind is built to find familiarity. Your name is your strongest audio trigger. That's why you can sleep through alarms, but wake up when someone says your name, even softly. That's why some people hear their name right before sleep or during dreams. The boundary between thought and sound loosens. Your brain plays back fragments, a word, a whisper, a voice, reassembled from memory, and it feels real, even though it isn't. But sometimes, that explanation doesn't feel like enough, because the voice felt specific, intentional, like something, was trying to reach you. You search for logic, electrical noise, thin walls, a neighbor's TV, maybe someone outside, but nothing fits. The voice was too close, too precise, too much you. Psychologists offer more insight. Under pressure, the mind can project conflict outward, a buried emotion, an unspoken thought, a need for attention. That part of you can call out. Using the most direct path, your own name. It's not psychosis, it's not madness, it's internal dialogue, escaping its usual disguise. Your brain speaking back to itself, in a voice you weren't expecting. But some interpretations step beyond psychology. Spiritual beliefs, old traditions. Some say when you hear your name, it means someone is thinking of you, or you've brushed against something unseen, a ripple, a signal, a presence. In many cultures, hearing your name without a source is a threshold, a call, a warning, a whisper from across the veil, not always malevolent, but never meaningless. In some traditions, you're told, don't answer. If something calls your name from the unseen, don't give it your voice, because to name is to know, and to know is to hold power. Whatever speaks your name knows you exist. That knowledge alone is a kind of entry. Still, you don't need to believe in spirits to be disturbed. Even from a purely neurological view, the experience matters. Because your brain is supposed to obey rules. Input, processing output. But hearing a voice with no source breaks that chain. You stop. You scan the room. You listen. You wait. Then you whisper back, almost involuntarily, "Hello?" No reply. And that's worse. The silence, after the voice, feels louder than the sound ever did. You feel two things at once: relief and unease. Nothing's there, but something still feels wrong. The moment passes, but it clings. You'll forget emails, appointments, conversations from last week. But this, you won't forget. Because it's not about the voice. It's about the disruption. The script of reality suddenly didn't play out as expected. And whether you explain it through brain science, sensory psychology, or something else entirely, you're still left with one question you can't shake. Who called your name? And why? You're sitting in a cafe. The air hums with quiet activity. A clatter of dishes, the low murmur of conversation. A spoon drops, someone laughs, and a waitress walks by. And then, you freeze. Not because something happened, but because everything that just did already happened. The motion of her hand, the metallic clang, the rhythm of that laugh. You've seen this, heard this, lived this, not vaguely, exactly. You know what's going to happen next. And it does. For a few strange seconds, reality feels like a rerun. Not just familiar, identical. Then, just as suddenly, the feeling disappears. The air returns to normal. The moment moves on, and you sit there, blinking, wondering, what just happened? That sensation, that eerie replay of the now, is called déjà vu. It's French, meaning already seen. But it doesn't just feel like you've seen something before. It feels like you're remembering the present, as if your brain has mistaken the now for a memory it shouldn't have. It's unsettling, not because of what happens, but because of what you feel. Certainty. You know this has happened. You're sure of it. But also, you know it hasn't. And holding both truths at once makes reality bend. Almost everyone experiences déjà vu at least once, some more than others. It tends to show up when you're tired, stressed, or somewhere unfamiliar. It arrives quickly, lingers for only seconds, and leaves before you can dissect it. You try to grab onto it, to analyze the pieces. But like a dream, it fades the harder you look. And still, something in you insists. You've been here before. The brain doesn't like mystery, so it gets to work. Did you dream this? Did it happen in childhood? Was it in a movie? A book? It scans the archives, but finds no match. And that's the strange core of déjà vu, a perfect familiarity with no known source. There are many theories. One says it's a glitch in how the brain files memories. Normally, new experiences are processed, then stored, but sometimes those steps get crossed, and a moment is filed as a memory the instant you experience it. The brain treats the present as if it already happened. You're not recalling the past, you're misperceiving the now. Another theory blames timing. If different parts of the brain receive and interpret data slightly out of sync, you might get a false sense of recognition. A delay of milliseconds between input and memory processing can create the illusion that you're remembering what you're actually experiencing. Some researchers think déjà vu is triggered when the current environment closely resembles subtle details from forgotten moments. A smell, a sound, a lighting pattern. Some small combination that echoes the past. Your conscious mind doesn't recognize it, but your subconscious does. That buried memory, too faint to name, sends a ripple. And suddenly, you feel like you've looped. This links to implicit memory, the kind that shapes feelings and decisions without you ever being aware of it. It's the same memory that makes a melody feel sad, a place feel safe, a face seem familiar. Déjà vu might be your brain surfacing a match, without the context. Some say it comes from dreams. You may have dreamt a moment like this: a red curtain, a broken chair, the clink of a spoon, but forgot it. Then one day, you walk into real life and it matches perfectly. It feels like it came from nowhere. But maybe it came from sleep. Others take it further. They say déjà vu isn't a glitch. It's a crossover. A bleed through from another version of you, in another timeline. You're not remembering the past. You're remembering what your parallel self already did. A second of overlap, a flicker between lives, a reminder that time might not be linear, just layered. Some even believe it's a signal. You're on the right path. Your life has hit a point of alignment. That's why it feels familiar, because your choices are syncing with something deeper. Fate, pattern, or destiny. These theories can't be tested, but they reveal something important. We don't want déjà vu to be meaningless. The sensation is too strong to be brushed off. In clinical studies, déjà vu is often linked to the temporal lobes, especially in people with epilepsy. Just before a seizure, some report waves of intense déjà vu. That's led some scientists to believe it may involve brief misfires in the brain's memory circuits. But for the rest of us who don't have epilepsy, déjà vu still happens and remains a mystery. Because no matter what causes it, it doesn't feel like a malfunction. It feels like truth. In those few seconds, time goes strange. Reality feels staged, and your body reacts. Some feel a chill, others a strange calm. Some feel awe, others fear. Your heart races, your senses heighten, your mind stretches, trying to pull the thread to make the present make sense. But déjà vu resists resolution. That's its nature. It feels like a clue with no answer, a locked door with no key. You know you've been here. You know you haven't. Both truths shimmer in your mind at once. Then, it's gone. The waitress turns. The spoon is picked up. Someone tells a joke, and the cafe carries on. And so do you. But you don't forget. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was loud, but because it reminded you, for a flicker of time, that this life might not be what it seems. You're sitting with friends, talking about the past. Someone brings up a moment everyone remembers, a big event, a news headline, something that marked time. The death of Robin Williams, for example. They say it happened in 2014. You pause. That doesn't feel right. Not because it didn't happen, but because you remember it happening years earlier. You remember exactly where you were, what room you were in, what the sky looked like outside, the strange heaviness that sat with you after hearing it. You're sure. The memory is detailed, emotionally charged, anchored to a time you can describe. I was still in college, you might say. Only, you graduated before 2014. You pull out your phone. You double-check the date. You were off, not by days, not by months, by years. And yet, you still feel like you were right. That isn't just forgetting. It's not confusion about the event itself. It's something deeper, a misplaced timeline. That's when the content of a memory is accurate, but its position in time isn't. It's not that you forgot what happened. It's that your mind insists it happened in a different chapter of your life. You're not fuzzy. You're not vague. You're certain. But the facts disagree, and that contradiction feels like the ground shifting. This isn't rare. It happens to more people than you'd expect. And when it does, you don't just question the date. You start questioning the structure of memory itself. These timeline glitches appear often with major public events, political elections, celebrity deaths, historic tragedies. Someone might swear the Challenger explosion was in 1983, not 1986. Another might confidently place the Brexit vote in 2014, not 2016. They remember where they were, who they were with, the emotional tone of the moment. It all feels right, except the date. And when corrected, they're disoriented, as if history has subtly rearranged itself. Psychologists have names for this. but they don't explain away the feeling. Human memory isn't a chronological list. It's a patchwork, built from images, sensations, and emotional landmarks. We don't store memories with precise timestamps. We store them in relation to other events. That was before I moved. That happened the year I broke my leg. If one anchor drifts, the whole structure shifts with it. Say you heard two similar news stories years apart. Your mind might blend them. The first becomes a stand-in for the second. And when the second happens, you feel like it already did. This compression makes your timeline skip, like a scratched record. You remember the moment, but assign it to the wrong year. And when emotions are involved, the error feels even more convincing. Emotion cements memory, but it doesn't guarantee accuracy. Another cause? Media repetition. News outlets recycle footage. Old interviews air again. Documentaries replay scenes. If you see 9/11 footage in a 2021 documentary, you may later remember watching it in 2021, forgetting it was a retrospective. Your brain stores the visual and emotional content, but blurs the context. Later, you're sure you saw it live, when you didn't. This reshuffling of context creates cracks in your timeline. And then, there's collective memory. If enough people remember something differently than it happened, you might adopt that version. Not because you're weak-minded, but because human memory is social. We trust group confidence. We mirror consensus. And once that memory settles, it's incredibly hard to dislodge. The internet makes this even easier. Thousands of people can reinforce the same wrong date, and it starts to feel like truth. Sleep, stress, and emotional overload also play roles. When your mind is foggy, it struggles to store memories with clarity. The feeling of the event gets logged, but the timestamp? That gets guessed later, based on emotion, familiarity, and nearby memories. It doesn't feel like a guess. It feels like certainty. But your inner calendar may be months or years off. Sometimes, these misplaced timelines overlap with déjà vu, or even the Mandela Effect. You remember seeing a headline before it ever officially happened. You see a major story break and feel cold, because you already knew. Not vaguely, specifically. You remember details, outcomes, and now they're playing out, frame by frame. It doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like time has doubled back. These moments are nearly impossible to study, because the facts aren't wrong, the dates are real, the memories are intact. It's just that your brain put the puzzle pieces in the wrong order. And here's the deeper discomfort. Not just psychological, but philosophical. We like to believe our past is solid, fixed, that once something happens, it's pinned down. But it's not. Memory isn't archival, it's relational. Your brain measures time not by clocks, but by feelings, associations, and context. So when a memory moves, you don't just lose a fact. You lose a thread in the story of your life. You start to wonder, if this moment shifted, what else has? How many of your beliefs are based on misfiled memories? You check the article again. Robin Williams died in 2014. The date is there. Confirmed. And yet, you could have sworn it was 2011. Not roughly, not vaguely. You remember the shirt you were wearing, the room, the sky outside. You nod, accept the correction, close the browser. But inside, something still feels displaced, like time folded, not the facts. You haven't forgotten. You just remember it in the wrong life. You're riding the bus, half awake, half elsewhere. One of those silent days where nothing stands out until something does. You glance forward, casually, and notice a man. Gray hoodie, black jeans, white sneakers. He's hunched, scrolling through his phone, thumbs swiping like muscle memory. Nothing unusual, until your eyes drift a few rows ahead, and you see him again. Same hoodie, same jeans, same sneakers, same brand of phone, same posture, head tilted down, right ankle draped over the left knee. Your mind hesitates. You check again. It's not similar, it's identical. Same hand movements, same idle gesture, as if one man had been copied and pasted into a new seat. You scan the space for a mirror, but there's none. They're real, both of them. Two strangers, perfect replicas, existing at once. And you're the only one who seems to notice. You feel the urge to point it out. But what would you say? Hey, you two look exactly the same? The moment sounds absurd, but it doesn't feel absurd. It feels off. It feels wrong in a quiet, clinical way, like the universe slipped and didn't expect you to catch it. The brain is designed to spot patterns, faces, symmetry, motion. That's how we recognize loved ones in a crowd or detect a lie from a single gesture. But when the pattern is too precise, too perfect, it sets off a quiet alarm. The brain expects variation, and when it doesn't find it, it panics. Gently, subtly. There are, of course, practical reasons for how this could happen. Fast fashion, limited styles, chain store uniforms, gray hoodies sold everywhere. Black jeans are always in. White sneakers, a staple. Same phone model, same earbuds, same slouched posture influenced by the same algorithmic world. You could explain it. But can you explain why they shifted their weight at the same time? Why they lifted their heads in the same slow arc and then dropped them again like synchronized dancers no one told to perform? You keep watching, trying not to. But your eyes are pulled, drawn back again and again. It feels less like coincidence, more like choreography, like a loop, like a rendering error, like a moment that doesn't belong in real life. And no one else around you reacts. They keep scrolling, staring out windows, sleeping. You feel alone in this noticing, the observer of a secret glitch. Some call this a reality hiccup, a break in the expected flow where logic wrinkles just enough to be noticed by someone paying attention. Nothing explodes. No shadowy figures appear. But the precision itself becomes the paranormal. Your brain stumbles not because something's missing, but because something is too aligned. There's folklore behind this too. The doppelganger, German for double walker, has long haunted myth and tale. A spectral twin, an omen, a warning. But what happens when both versions are real, and neither one is you? You're not seeing your twin. you're seeing theirs. Two humans walking the world with the same skin, same codes, and neither reacts to the other. They never glance up, never acknowledge each other. No nod, no smile, no confusion. They exist side by side, like files opened from the same template. Some say it's proof we live in a simulation, that reality is rendered on demand, and sometimes the program reuses assets. Two background characters spawned from the same base model, acting out their idle loops. It's not proven. It may never be. But the language of simulation offers a new lens for an ancient feeling. The feeling that something's too exact. Others turn to behavioral mirroring. Humans subconsciously mirror one another in groups. Body language, word choice, energy. But these two, they weren't friends. They weren't in sync. They didn't even look at each other. Their faces weren't similar. Their hair was different. But everything else matched. You search for reasons. Twins? Maybe. But the faces disagree. They don't move like siblings. They move like echoes. When the bus stops, they stand up at the same time. One exits through the front, the other through the back. They head in opposite directions. No goodbye, no glance, just gone. And you're left there, holding the moment. The silence, the stale bus air, the faint light through the window. All of it now branded with something unexplainable. You won't forget this, even if the day itself fades, even if the errands, the emails, the tasks vanish. This moment sticks, because it shouldn't have happened, because it did. You'll replay it later, maybe at dinner, maybe just before sleep, and you'll ask yourself, what did I see? Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was just a coincidence stacked too high. Or maybe you caught a seam, a thread in the fabric where the universe didn't quite tie its ends. And now you know. There are strangers who walk in sync, wear the same shell, repeat the same script. And whether by design or by accident, you saw them share your world for just a minute. You're walking to work, same path as always. The rhythm is automatic. Your feet know every crack in the sidewalk, every light that turns green before you reach it. But today, at the corner where you always turn left, you stop. No sound, no movement, no visible reason, just a pause. You glance right. A quieter street, less direct. A few minutes longer. You don't have an explanation. You just feel it. This is the way today. So you turn. Not out of fear, not from logic, just instinct. Hours later, you hear what happened. On your usual route. At nearly the exact time you would have been there. A crash. A robbery. A sudden chase. Something sharp that could have cut through your day or your body. And you sit there, uneasy, not shaken by the news itself, but by your own choice. Why did I change paths? What part of me knew? It wasn't reason. It wasn't planning. It was something beneath both. These moments, unexplainable instincts, happen more often than most admit. You take a different seat on the train. You forget your wallet. You pause a moment longer at a doorway. You cancel a meeting last minute with no real excuse. and later you hear what could have happened if you hadn't. These aren't decisions. They don't arrive dressed in logic. They're fast, bare, reflexive, but they feel right. Psychology calls it the subconscious. Your brain takes in thousands of cues every second. Smells, sounds, temperature shifts, tension in voices, the way someone's eyes move. Details you never consciously notice, but your deeper mind catalogs them all. When a certain combination forms, a pattern emerges, and your body acts before your thoughts do. You slow down. You cross the street early. You stop walking just as something falls behind you. It doesn't feel psychic. It feels natural, like gravity. But not every instinct comes from sensory data. Some arise from a place deeper still. You're lacing your shoes, and you stop. No sound, no movement, just stillness. You sit back down, not out of dread, just discomfort. Then the phone rings. Someone is in crisis, or the intersection you were heading toward is now filled with sirens. You didn't see anything. You didn't hear a warning. You just felt it. This kind of instinct isn't reaction. It's anticipation. It feels more like a whisper from the edge of awareness. People call it many things: a hunch, a sixth sense, an invisible thread. Sometimes it's linked to emotion. You're deeply connected to someone: a parent, a child, a friend. And suddenly you feel uneasy. You call, and they've just had a terrible moment. You didn't know, but you knew. These moments aren't always dramatic. Sometimes they're quiet. A missed train, a random stop at a cafe, a delayed departure because you spilled coffee and had to change shirts. You curse the inconvenience. Until later, when you see what that delay spared you from: a fire, a crash, a confrontation that happened in the exact space you would have occupied. People call it coincidence, luck. But inside, you know better. Some believe it's spiritual, guardian forces, ancestors, angels, the universe nudging gently with invisible hands, a quiet voice that says, "Wait. Go now." No proof, but the outcomes speak. You were protected. Others see it as timing, the great machinery of reality adjusting by fractions of a second. One missed call, and a domino doesn't fall. One step slower, and the wave passes before you enter. It's easy to dismiss, to say nothing happened, to ignore the what if. But later, you feel it. The hairs rise on your arms. Your breath catches. You know you avoided something, not because you were smart, but because you listened to something you couldn't name. And that silence, that decision made from nothing, echoes louder than most words. We don't like this idea. It unsettles our belief in control. We want reasons, explanations, data. But instincts don't ask. They don't argue. They just tug. Gently, urgently, silently. And when they're ignored, we often say, "I knew I shouldn't have gone." Not in hindsight, in memory, in warning. It's not always right, but when it is, it cuts clean, precise, like a force that arrived without explanation and kept you exactly where you were meant to be. You won't talk about it much. Maybe a passing mention. Funny thing, I almost went the other way. People nod, smile, move on. But you remember, because something spoke to you without words, and in the quiet, you listened. You're crossing a plaza, or maybe a train station. There are dozens of people flowing like water in every direction. Your eyes drift, casually observing. Backpacks, rolling suitcases, coffee cups, headphones. Then, your gaze locks. Something feels off. A small group, 3, maybe 4 strangers, not walking together, not speaking, not glancing at each other, but moving in perfect sync. Same pace, same stride. Their left feet rise and fall together. Their posture tilts in unison. Their arms sway at the exact same angles. They turn at the same second. They stop at the same time. They move, as if choreographed. No cues, no signals, no shared glance. You blink. Still happening, still together. You glance around. No one else notices. No one else seems disturbed. But you are. Because this isn't just walking, it's mirroring. Exact. Eerie. Mechanical. Then, one of them stops to check his phone. The others continue. The spell breaks. The rhythm dissolves. And suddenly, you're left standing there, wondering what you just witnessed. This isn't hallucination. It's not imagination. You know what you saw, and it happens more than people admit. Not often, but just enough to linger in memory. Not terrifying, not dramatic, just wrong. In the way a glitch is wrong. Small, precise, and unsettling. Science offers explanations. To a point. Humans naturally sync movement. When people walk side by side, even without speaking, their steps often fall into rhythm. It's subconscious, an ancient instinct. Group motion equals safety. Trust. It's why soldiers march, why dancers can align without cues, why rituals move in time. But those are trained, coordinated, practiced. These strangers weren't. They weren't together, weren't interacting, weren't even looking at one another. And yet, they walked like a single organism. That's the difference. This isn't mild alignment. It's full-body synchronicity, unprompted, undeniable. Researchers call it spontaneous interpersonal coordination. When people share space and pace and destination, they begin to mirror. A hallway, a crosswalk, an airport terminal. But real life always breaks the rhythm. Someone adjusts their bag, slows down, pulls out a phone, gets distracted. True synchronization doesn't last unless it's designed, which is why when it happens, when you see it, it pierces through normality, because it shouldn't be that perfect. You start to study them. Are they part of a group? Actors? Twins? Tourists? But there's no resemblance, no shared clothing, no similar age, no cultural cue. They are just people. normal, ordinary, doing something extraordinary. There are stories like this, all over. A man in Manhattan watches 3 strangers cross a street. They're evenly spaced. Their feet hit the curb at the same second. They stop at the light together, then start again with identical rhythm, without ever exchanging a glance. Or a woman in Chicago sees 2 unrelated passengers walking side by side in lockstep. Same pace, same stride, both checking their phones, lifting their heads at the same moment. Then, one turns left, the other continues straight. No goodbye, no nod. Just exit stage left. It's not always just 2 or 3. Sometimes it's a line of pedestrians, moving like a wave, onto the curb, across the intersection, off again, with a cadence so unified it could be a drill. But it's not. It's not performance art. It's not practice. It's not even acknowledged. It just happens. And then it doesn't. What causes it? Entrainment is one theory. Independent systems, given enough exposure, sync. Fireflies blink together. Metronomes align on the same table. Heartbeats adjust during meditation. Humans do it too. Your brain might match the pace of those around you without permission. It's not conscious. It just happens. But entrainment usually ends at pace, at steps. It doesn't explain the mirrored head tilts, identical hand movements, or synchronized blinks. That level of detail goes beyond the normal. It begins to feel scripted. Then there's social scripts, unspoken rules in public. Stay to the right, don't make eye contact, keep your pace, flow with the crowd. But again, those guide behavior. They don't generate precision choreography, so people look elsewhere. Simulation theory. If this world is generated, rendered in real time, then maybe some background characters are simply reused code, copied movement patterns, duplicate behaviors. You weren't meant to notice, but today you did. You saw the loop. You caught the repeat, the glitch. 2 or more strangers doing the same thing. Not like humans, but like instructions. And when the simulation stutters, you see it, just long enough to feel reality wrinkle. People don't talk about it. Not really. They'll say, "That was weird," then change the subject. Because the discomfort lingers, quiet, private. You remember the sound of matching footsteps, the harmony, the silence. You remember how the light looked, how time felt slower, how the whole space held its breath. And next time, you look over your shoulder, just to see. If anyone is walking like they've done it 100 times before, same foot, same rhythm, same sequence, and if you catch it, even for a second, you won't speak, you won't shout, you'll just watch and wonder, because somewhere inside you already know. Some patterns aren't accidents. You're walking through a crowded street, busy, distracted, thinking about nothing in particular. Then, you glance across the road, and your body freezes. Someone is standing by a bus stop, or maybe stepping out of a small shop, and for a moment, they are your friend. Not just a resemblance, not a vague similarity, but your friend. Same haircut, same jawline, same posture, even the same jacket they wore last week. Your hand lifts instinctively. A wave, half formed in the air. But you pause, because something isn't right. They don't see you. They don't respond. They're just standing there, still, unaware, present, but not present with you. You stare a little longer. The face is too familiar to dismiss. You want to believe it's just a coincidence, a weird one, a funny story for later. But something deeper resists that idea. Your gut twists, not with fear, with recognition. This is no vague look-alike. It's not someone who reminds you of a cousin or an actor or a classmate. It's exact. You walk away slowly, your mind still split. You're unsure what you saw, but the echo follows you. Later, you mention it. To the friend. They weren't there, not even close. They were out of town, didn't wear that jacket, didn't pass that street. They have no twin, no reason to be mistaken. And yet, you saw them. This is a doppelganger encounter. Moments when someone looks so precisely like someone else, or even like you, that it breaks the rules of what your brain expects. Sometimes it's instant, a shock of recognition. Other times, you notice it only after the moment passes, when the image returns to you in fragmented flashes. And when it does, you're left haunted by the precision. People joke, everyone has a twin. But when it happens to you, it doesn't feel like a joke. It feels engineered, precise, or worse, staged. You question the odds. Same haircut, same face, same coat, same way of standing, same way of holding a cup. Sometimes you just see them from afar. A glance across a cafe, a reflection in a window. But sometimes, you follow them, blocks and blocks, watching the way they walk, the curve of their shoulders, the movement of their hands. You might even loop around just to catch their face again. You're not trying to be creepy. You're trying to understand, to prove to yourself that you're not imagining things. Because deep down, you're not sure if you want it to be someone you know or not. And sometimes, it's you. You see someone who looks exactly like you, not in a mirror, not in a picture, but in real life, a stranger, walking your pace, wearing your jacket, with your build, your profile, your gait. You freeze. Your stomach drops. Your body reacts before your thoughts can. Some approach. Others don't. Some panic. Others feel dizzy, like the boundaries of self just got stretched too far. There's no one explanation. Science says facial structures repeat. Billions of people. Billions of features. But not infinite combinations. Statistically, a stranger might share your jawline, or your friend's eyes, or your sibling's smile. And yet, when it happens, it doesn't feel statistical. It feels personal, precise, tailored. There are documented cases. People who've met their lookalikes. Photos taken side by side, often viral online. You can see the resemblance, clear enough to confuse even family. And DNA tests confirm no relation. Still, The geometry aligns. Facial metrics, head shape, eye distance, smile lines. It's explainable, but not dismissible. Because the moment isn't just about visuals, it's about energy, presence, familiarity. A real doppelganger moment feels like a presence, not just a face. Like their stillness matches. Like their expression carries the same thought your friend might have. Like they're holding not just your memory, but your trust. Sometimes it's projection. You miss someone. You see them everywhere. Your brain overlays your longing onto a stranger's silhouette. It happens. But sometimes you take a photo, and when you compare, the image is undeniable, not just similar, identical, and multiple people see it too, unprompted. Other times, the experience is unphotographable, too fast, too strange. A woman walks into a bookstore in a foreign city. Behind the counter, someone who looks exactly like her childhood friend from another country. She leaves, shaken. Later she calls. Her friend has never been to that city. When the woman returns, she can't find the bookstore. It's not there. She walks the block, checks maps. Gone. Some stories go deeper. A man sits at a bar, sees someone who looks exactly like him. Same shirt, same face, same watch. He looks away, looks back. Gone. He asks around. No one saw the man, just him. Some cultures call these moments omens. In German, Doppelganger means double walker, a shadow self, a warning, an echo. In folklore, seeing your double was a sign of death, a signal that reality was tearing, thinning. In other beliefs, the doppelganger wasn't a ghost, but a glitch, a fault in the real. Today, people still walk away from these experiences with an ache, not from fear, but from uncertainty. We're taught that people are unique. Identities are personal. When you see someone perfectly duplicated, without logic, without explanation, it challenges what you believe. Some say, maybe this is simulation. Maybe the system just reuses models. Maybe you weren't meant to notice. But today, you did. Whether or not it's true, the feeling is. You remember the moment for years. The face, the clothes, the movement, the silence. Not just what you saw, but what you felt. That something or someone was in the wrong place, or that you were, and that, for just a second, reality folded. You're driving through the city, rush hour, red lights, a sea of brake lights ahead, the usual noise, horns, rumbling engines, distant sirens. Your eyes scan the road, 6 cars in front, 3 to the right, a full string behind, boxed in, edge to edge. A bus idles near the corner. People cross slowly. The light glows red. You sigh. You're already running late. Then, green. The cars begin to roll forward, one by one, like dominoes resetting. You move with them. Left turn, then forward. You expect another wall of congestion, but when you look up, the road is empty, not just light. Empty. A wide 4-lane stretch that's usually gridlocked at this hour, now silent. No cars in your lane, none in the rearview mirror, not even a pair of taillights disappearing in the distance. The absence is eerie. It doesn't feel like traffic cleared. It feels like it vanished. You glance to the right. No parked cars, no hidden exits, no merging lanes. You check your mirrors again. Still nothing. It feels like a reset, like the scene around you blinked, and when your eyes reopened, the cast was gone. You keep driving, expecting the crowd to catch up, but they don't. You pass intersection after intersection. Still, no one. You reach the mall entrance, normally a mess of brake lights. Today, it's silent. You try to stay calm, but confusion seeps in. Where did everyone go? You didn't see them turn. You didn't see them pass. There was no exit, no sirens, no detour signs, just a city now hollowed out, and you're alone in it. These aren't rare stories. People describe them all the time. They're stuck in thick traffic, and then suddenly, they're not. No warning, no logic, just absence. The common explanations begin. Some say it's synchronization. Traffic lights at major intersections release waves of vehicles. If you catch the tail of a group and take one unexpected turn, you can find yourself in a quiet pocket. A natural break, a breath between convoys. But that only explains so much, because what people describe goes beyond that. It's not falling behind, it's a disappearance. 50 cars, 100 headlights, all there. 1 second, gone the next. No signs, no ramps, no mass exit. You check the area, no side streets, no hidden curves. The layout didn't change, but the players are missing. Others point to perceptual gaps, moments when your focus narrows, on a red light, on a turn, on a sound. And when your attention returns, something has shifted. You didn't see the transition, but the outcome is clear. The road, once crowded, is now wide open, and the silence feels designed. Some experiences are sharper. A man waits behind dozens of cars. Light turns green. They begin to crawl. He checks his phone, just for a second. When he looks back up, he's alone. No hum, no tire squeal, no exhaust trail. Just a green light and empty space. He keeps driving, but the cars never return. Others tell of exits. Any exit. They're caught in gridlock. They take a random left, and the world drops away. No cars, no noise. Even the air feels different, lighter, thinner, like they passed through some invisible curtain. It's not just roads either. Some describe malls crowded with people until they round a corner. Suddenly, no one, no footsteps, no echoes, just stillness, like the volume of reality got turned down. These stories ask deeper questions. If you didn't see the cars turn or the people vanish, where did they go? If the roads didn't change, why did the world? Theories grow stranger. Simulation theory emerges again. What if the world is rendered on proximity? What if what you're not looking at doesn't stay loaded? Once you stop focusing, the system despawns the details. No need for traffic when you're not watching. The code resets to save memory. That theory might not be testable, but it matches the feeling. That quiet awareness that what you're seeing wasn't quite built right. Or maybe you experienced a flicker, a shift in attention. You were too focused on the light, the timing, the engine. And in that microsecond, something changed. You didn't notice until after. And by then, the scene no longer matched what memory expected. Some drivers describe the reverse. They're alone on a highway for miles. No headlights, no taillights, just road. Then, boom, a traffic jam, out of nowhere. No on-ramps, no merges, no visible cause. Just suddenly, dozens of cars, as if dropped into place. People ask, where were they hiding? But no one has an answer. These moments aren't dramatic. They don't bring fear. They bring a pause, a shift, like a glitch in a loop you didn't know you were in, like walking through a dream that suddenly rearranges its furniture. The feeling lingers. You glance in the mirror. Still no one behind you. You check the sky. Same clouds. You look at the signs. They're correct. But the road feels different. Like you slipped into a version of the world where traffic forgot to show up. And you wonder, was it chance? Or did the scene change because you did? You're sitting alone at your desk. Your phone is across the room, screen dark, untouched for over an hour. Then, without sound or reason, the screen lights up. No call, no notification, just light. And then the messaging app opens. You watch, frozen. Letters begin appearing, one at a time. Not words, not predictive text, just random characters, scattered keystrokes, like someone is typing from inside the glass. You walk over slowly. As your hand nears the device, the app vanishes. Back to the home screen. Calm, normal. You press the power button. Everything works. No new apps, no weird updates, no explanation. Just silence. Later that night, your laptop freezes. You're typing an email. Nothing heavy, no video, no games. The screen stutters. White static, black lines. Then it goes dead. Total shutdown. Fans stop. Lights go out. You didn't press anything. You just sat there, hands off the keys. You try to power it back on. Nothing. You wait. You leave. You come back 10 minutes later, and it turns itself on. No login screen, just your desktop, like it never left. These aren't isolated events. People report them every day. A Bluetooth speaker powering on in the middle of the night. A smart assistant answering a question no one asked. A TV flicking through channels while the remote sits untouched. An old digital clock resets to 1:20 a.m. No power outage. You walk past a tablet and it lights up. A search bar already filled in. Not by you, not by voice. It was already there. The first instinct is always logic. A loose cable, a bad update, a faulty screen. Technology is fragile. Millions of connections, fragile sensors, timing so precise it can fracture with a single bite of corruption. Static buildup, dirty ports, ghost touches, apps crashing from conflicts. Those are the known culprits, the rational answers. But still, sometimes the glitch feels personal. You're holding your phone. The screen flickers. You're not touching it. The camera opens, then closes, then the flashlight flicks on. You reboot. Everything works, for days, until it happens again. Same flicker, same sequence, no pattern, no warning. Other times, the tech feels like it knows. You type a message. The screen lags, just for a beat. And when it unfreezes, the words are wrong. You didn't write that, but it's in your style, your phrasing, your rhythm, your tone, but not your intent. You delete it. You shrug. But it stays with you. Those who work in tech call it the cost of complexity. Computers don't understand intent. They only follow orders, even when the orders break. When code collides with memory, when scripts loop or hang, things go strange. Most of the time, it's nothing. But when it keeps happening across different devices, you begin to question randomness, not out of fear, but from the pattern. A speaker buzzes, then stops. A TV resets, then turns back on. Nothing is ever broken. Nothing is truly wrong. Yet you begin to watch your devices like they might watch you back. A tablet scrolls a PDF you haven't opened in days. A smart TV shows a program you've never selected. Your laptop's cursor begins to drift, slowly, like it's being guided. You tap the trackpad. It stops. But you know you didn't cause it. You reset, you update, you move on, until the next time. This time it's your smartwatch, buzzing an alert that never shows. Your headphones disconnect mid-song, then reconnect. Not once, not randomly, but at the exact same time every day this week. You laugh it off. You tell yourself it's a sync error, but somewhere deeper, it feels like something else. Not malicious, not haunted, just aware. Some call it mechanical déjà vu. You've seen this glitch before. The same error, the same freeze. You know what will happen before it does. Not because you learned it, but because you feel it. Like you've lived through this same malfunction in another version of the moment. Then come the moments that feel tailored. You say something aloud, not a command, just a passing thought. And your phone lights up. No sound, no activation, just awareness. Or you open a document, and the exact paragraph you weren't reading starts to highlight itself. You tell yourself it's lag. You tell yourself it's touch delay. But your gut disagrees. There are entire forums dedicated to these moments. People share screenshots, stories, smart assistants answering unspoken questions, notifications vanishing when tapped, apps opening and closing on their own. Not often, not daily, but enough to leave a mark. These moments interrupt routine. Technology becomes unfamiliar, unpredictable, almost alive. Engineers explain it in layers. Capacitive noise, thermal sensors, cheap screens, background processes. All of it real, all of it true. But none of it satisfies the unease, because machines are supposed to respond, not initiate. They are supposed to follow, not suggest. A phone lighting up at 3:04 a.m. An app that opens, then disappears. A photo album scrolling itself. Small things, forgettable things, but they accumulate. You begin to wonder, not if the machine is broken, but if your trust is. You run the updates, you check the logs, everything looks fine, but the next time you set your phone down, you hesitate. You glance at it, just a moment longer, to see if it will move again. You wake up with your chest tight. Something about the dream won't let go. It wasn't just vivid, it felt designed, structured, heavy with meaning. You remember walking through a building, tall and old, its hallways dimly lit, walls humming with quiet tension. Door after door, you passed them all, until one stood open. Inside, a flickering light overhead, a single chair in the middle, and someone standing beside it. Their face was in shadow. You couldn't make it out. But they spoke. You don't remember the words, only the tone. It felt like something important had been said, something meant for you. You didn't write it down, but you felt it echo. Later that morning, you're chatting with a friend. They look exhausted. You ask if they slept well. They pause, then say, "Not really. Had a weird dream." They describe it casually. A tall building, dark halls, doors, a flickering room, a chair, a figure, a voice they didn't know. Your heart slows. You wait for them to smirk, to laugh. But they don't. They aren't guessing. They're describing it. Exactly. The same layout, same order, same feeling. You hadn't told them anything, and they hadn't hinted. Yet here you both are, dreaming the same dream. These are shared dreams. They don't happen every day, but they happen often enough to defy easy explanation. Friends, siblings, couples, even strangers, waking up with the same memory, the same dreamscape, not just a similar feeling, the same hallway, the same voice, the same sequence. It shouldn't be possible. Dreams are supposed to be private, inner, locked to one mind. But these shared scenes say otherwise. Science tries to explain. Psychologists talk about shared stimuli. You both saw the same movie, had the same conversation, processed the same stress. Your brain used the same raw material. So the dreams look alike. That might work for vague overlaps. A hospital, a flood, a crowd. But what about when you both dream of a room that doesn't exist? A specific statue you've never discussed? Or a spiral staircase in a city that has no name? Where does that come from? Sometimes they say, it's suggestion. One person describes their dream, and the other absorbs it. Later, they dream it too, not knowing the seed was planted. Then memory distortion fills the rest. You both believe it happened at the same time. But this doesn't hold up when both people share the dream before they speak. Before anything is suggested, the brain looks for patterns, yes, but sometimes the precision goes beyond matching moods. Two people see the same masked figure. Two people walk the same corridor with the same broken mirror at the end. It's not a vibe, it's a match. And that's when you start to wonder, What if dreams aren't stories? What if they're places? Not mental movies, but shared spaces, environments your mind visits, and sometimes someone else visits too. Not metaphorically, literally. Your consciousness overlaps with theirs, and for a moment you dream together. There's no proof, no instrument to measure it, but the idea is ancient. Indigenous cultures have spoken of dream realms for centuries, spiritual landscapes where the living meet the dead, where teachers appear, where truths are passed soul to soul. In these traditions, dreams aren't random. They're territories. And when you meet someone there, it's not coincidence. It's a crossing. Others believe it's telepathy, silent communication when the noise of waking thought goes still. The theory is fragile. There's no lab proof of dreamtime telepathy, but dreams don't play by physics. They warp time. They rearrange space. They erase cause and effect. And in that blur, two minds can collide. Some people see it in long-term couples. Partners report returning again and again to the same imaginary locations. A strange house, a non-existent train, a beach with purple sand. They visit these places in their sleep, independently, then compare notes and find they were both there again. No planning, no intent, just arrival. Some track it in dream journals. A man dreams of a forest with blue lights. 3 days later, his sister, living across the country, writes of the same forest, same lights, same symbols carved into the trees. They didn't speak that week, but their minds walked the same path. It doesn't just happen between people who know each other. Online, strangers compare dream notes, endless hotels, elevators that loop, cities underwater, masked watchers that always stand just outside reach. They post the details and find others who've seen the same. The architecture lines up, the sequence, even the endings. It's not mass hysteria. It's not fandom. These are original scenes shared by people who've never met. The dreams aren't always eerie. Sometimes they're peaceful. A garden, a floating staircase, a child's voice, a room where every clock ticks in perfect unison. And two people wake with the memory, clear, undeniable, that they were both there, even if only for a minute. No control, no planning, no logic, just presence. And it lingers. Because if two minds can arrive at the same story, uncoordinated, uninvited, then dreams aren't as private as we believe. Maybe consciousness isn't sealed. Maybe the mind doesn't dream alone. Maybe it wanders. And sometimes, just sometimes, it finds someone else wandering too. You sit down to write a simple email. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, ready. But they don't move, not right away. You stare at the letters like it's your first time seeing them. This isn't just forgetting a word. It's forgetting how to begin. Not just which key is which, but what they're for. A few seconds pass. You blink. You shift in your seat. And slowly, your fingers remember. The words trickle back. The letters form. You finish the email. But something feels off. Not just strange, deeply wrong. Because this wasn't about memory. It was about identity. You don't just know how to type. You are someone who types, who drives, who cooks, who knows how to tie a shoe. When those things slip, even briefly, you feel like you've dropped a piece of yourself. People rarely talk about this, not because it's rare, but because it's hard to explain. These aren't dramatic episodes. They're subtle cracks, moments where you reach for something automatic, and nothing happens. You step up to the stove and forget which knob controls the flame. You lift your phone and don't remember why. You try to unlock the door and suddenly left and right feel reversed. It passes, quickly, but it lingers. These aren't just memory gaps. They're gaps in function. Not, what was that actor's name? But, how do I put the car in reverse? The technical term? Action slip, also called a task interruption error. It's when your brain loses track of a sequence you've done 1,000 times. Most of your life runs on this invisible machinery. Autopilot actions that don't need your full attention. Brushing your teeth, signing your name, turning on a light. But when that circuit breaks, you stall. The body doesn't move, or moves wrong. And in those moments, the habit becomes a puzzle. You know the action, but the thread is cut. Stress makes it worse. So does fatigue. When the brain is overloaded, it triages. It drops background tasks to make room for immediate ones. And sometimes, what gets dropped is the bridge between you and something you do every day. You're thinking about a meeting, an argument, the groceries, and your fingers misspell your name. You glance at the screen. You don't recognize your own typing. Distraction does it too. You start making coffee. Your phone buzzes. You check a message. When you return, you don't know if you've added the grounds yet. You stare at the pot like it belongs to someone else. Not because you forgot the steps, but because the action became detached from your awareness. There's another phenomenon, jamais vu, the opposite of déjà vu. It's when the familiar suddenly feels unfamiliar. You look at the word "the," and it seems misspelled. You say your own name and it sounds wrong. This can stretch into movement. You raise a pen and forget how to sign. You start tying your shoes, and your fingers hesitate like they're learning it for the first time. Not a mistake, not clumsiness, just a blank. Speech can collapse too. You're mid-sentence, and your tongue won't shape the word. Not anxiety, not nerves, just a silent misfire between intention and action. Then it comes back, as if nothing happened. But that second feels stretched, like time folded in on itself. Musicians feel it too. A violinist who's played a song 1,000 times suddenly forgets what note comes next. They stop, look at their hands. The piece is there, but the path to it has vanished. Athletes describe the same. A gymnast facing the vault, frozen, not afraid, not in pain, just blank, like the motion slipped away while they were looking. These moments aren't always linked to stress. Sometimes they happen when you're rested, calm, clear-headed. You walk up to your own front door and can't remember how the key fits. You look at your lock and it doesn't feel real. You try one key, then another. Then suddenly it works again. But your body remembers the glitch. Even if your mind tries to move on, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. The brain isn't one storage room. It's 1,000 doors, and some take longer to open. Facts live in one part, emotions in another. movements somewhere else entirely. When you act without thinking, the conscious mind steps aside. But sometimes it tries to take over. That's when things stall. You begin to overcorrect, like riding a bike. If someone says, "Wait, how are you balancing right now?" and you start thinking about it, you might tip over. Some actions require no thought. The moment you bring thought into them, you interrupt the flow. You type slower. You second-guess the pedals. You fumble the zipper. It's not decay. It's not decline. It's the thin veil between habit and chaos. Most of the time, your brain does everything without complaint. But now and then, a crack appears, and through it, you glimpse how much you rely on automatic memory. How much of you is unconscious? You finish the email, you drive home, you unlock the door. It all works. But part of you remembers the moment when something old, something trusted, slipped, and for a second, you felt like a stranger inside your own hands. You wake up, and something feels wrong. Not the room, not the temperature, not the light. You're lying sideways across the bed, not the way you usually sleep. Your head is where your feet should be. Your shoes are still on. Your arms are bent at odd angles, and you don't remember putting them back on. You don't remember falling asleep like this at all. You don't remember getting into bed. You sit up slowly, reconstructing last night like a puzzle with missing corners. You recall scrolling your phone, maybe watching something. Then, nothing. Just this. Some people wake up not just rotated in bed, but somewhere else entirely. On the floor, at the foot of the bed, sitting upright in a chair, lying on the couch in the next room, fully dressed, shoes on, lights off, doors closed. No memory of how they got there. And what makes it disturbing isn't that it happened. It's that it happened quietly. No noise, no struggle, no chaos, just stillness. As if you were gently, precisely placed. Sleep is supposed to be safe. You lie down, close your eyes, and trust that you'll wake where you left yourself. But when you don't, it breaks something, not loudly, but deeply. There are explanations. Sleepwalking is the most common, but not the way movies show it. Most sleepwalking is slow, uneventful, easily forgotten. You might get up, sit in a chair, lie back down, never fully awake, never fully gone. But sleep researchers acknowledge something else. Most people who wake up in strange positions don't have a history of sleepwalking. And sleepwalking doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain why your shoes are on, or why they're still laced, or how you're now in a locked room you don't remember entering. Some blame micro-awakenings, brief moments in the night where the brain flickers awake just long enough to move. You might sit up, adjust a blanket, stand, shift your position, and return to sleep, and forget it all. So when you wake, the memory is gone, and it feels like you jumped. That's what unsettles people. Not the act, but the gap. You were in one place, now you're in another, and there's no trace of how you got there. No rumpled sheets, no footprints, no displaced pillows, just the shift. You fall asleep, curled up, but wake on your back, arms crossed like a statue. You fall asleep holding your phone, but it's now across the room on the windowsill. You check the floor. No signs, no scratches, no disruption. Only the result. Some stories go further. A man naps on the couch and wakes up in his car. Keys in the ignition. Doors locked. No memory of leaving the house. Everything untouched. Everything quiet. Another person wakes on the floor beside their bed. No pain, no discomfort. Just there. They check the camera. No footage. No movement. No alert. Just a cut. A before and an after. Sometimes it's almost comical. You wake up upside down, feet on the pillow, head at the footboard, but the blanket still tucked. The pillow still under your head, just at the wrong end. Not tossed, not crumpled, positioned. Others wake to find their socks removed and placed beside the bed. Not thrown, placed. Shoes on their feet. Clean, laced, perfect. Like they were never taken off. Sleep experts refer to parasomnias, odd behaviors during sleep. But even those tend to be messy. Kicking, tossing, scattered sheets. Not this. This is still. Intentional. Precise. People notice patterns. It happens more during high stress, or after deep exhaustion, or on nights when they don't remember dreaming at all. Some link it to medication. Others, no trigger, just the same story. Again and again. Always calm, always intact, but always off. Another theory? Memory lapse. Maybe you did move, consciously. Maybe you sat up, changed clothes, adjusted something, and your brain just didn't bother recording it. That could explain some of it. But it doesn't feel like a lapse. It feels like a discontinuity, a timeline jump. Some believe that the sleeping mind travels, and sometimes, on the way back, it lands slightly wrong. Not in another universe, not science fiction, just off. The same bed, the same room, but you, a few inches to the left, or reversed, or dressed again, not out of place, just misaligned. Others describe something deeper, not just waking in the wrong position, but waking in a version of the room that feels different. Subtle differences, the air, the light, the weight of the blanket. Like the copy is almost perfect, but not quite. These ideas can't be proven, but they fit the feeling. You're not confused. You're not scared. You're displaced. You know you didn't fall asleep like this, but you woke up here. So either something changed, or you did. You lie there, quietly. You touch the blanket. Feel the laces on your shoes. Glance at the door. The world looks the same, but something in you is watching it a little more closely. You stretch, get out of bed, move on, but part of you is still listening, still watching, still wondering where you'll wake up tomorrow. You glance at your phone. It's 11:11. You weren't checking the time, just glancing. Later, you open your laptop. The battery's at 33%. You walk past a billboard. The number ends in 777. You grab a receipt from a coffee shop, $5.55. At first, it seems random, a quirk, a coincidence. But it doesn't stop. It keeps happening. Different places, different times, different devices, same patterns. At first, you ignore it. Then you notice it. Then you can't stop noticing. You check the microwave. 2:22. A train car rolls by. 444. License plates, apartment numbers, digital clocks, page counts, repeating numbers. Again and again. You start to pay attention. And the more attention you pay, the more they appear. Some call them angel numbers. Others call them synchronicities. Some don't call them anything. They just notice. It's not about believing in numerology. It's about recognizing a pattern and asking why it keeps coming back. Psychologists have a term for this: frequency illusion, also called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. It's what happens when something new enters your awareness, a word, a sound, a shape, and suddenly it's everywhere, not because it's appearing more often, but because your brain has finally tuned in. The brain is a pattern engine. It sees rhythm in chaos, meaning in noise. You pass thousands of numbers each day. You only remember the ones that echo. Symmetrical numbers stick. 1111, 333, 777. They're visual rhythms. Order in a messy world. You don't remember 613. You remember 444. But sometimes, that explanation isn't enough. Because some people don't just notice the numbers. They predict them. They stop checking the clock on purpose. And still, they catch 111, 444, 222. Even when routines change, even across time zones, the numbers follow. And they show up not just on clocks. They appear in totals, addresses, street signs, the page number of a book you picked up at random. They seem to find you. That's when the pattern stops feeling passive and starts feeling personal, not like a message, more like a marker, as if something is tracking not what you're doing, but when you need to pause. Some assign meaning. 111 means alignment. 222 means balance. 333 means spiritual support. But meanings shift depending on the system. Numerology, astrology, mysticism. Still, you don't need a belief system to feel the pull, just the repetition, the timing, the way the number seems to tap you on the shoulder. And sometimes that's exactly what it does. It interrupts, mid-scroll, mid-thought, mid-routine. You look up, you see it, you stop, and you wonder, what was I just thinking? What was I about to do? What decision was forming in my mind before this number appeared? That pause alone is the message. Even if it means nothing, it does something. It breaks the pattern of your own distraction. It makes you present, aware, even for a second. And that second matters. There's science behind this too. The human brain responds to symmetry, repetition, regularity. These patterns are calming, visual rhythms in a chaotic world. Even if they're meaningless, they feel intentional. And we need that. People often notice repeating numbers during moments of transition, leaving a job, starting a relationship, waiting for something, grieving someone, standing on a threshold. The numbers become anchors, not because they give answers, but because they keep showing up, like checkpoints in a story you didn't know you were telling. There's also a feedback loop. You notice them, so your brain becomes better at finding them. And it does, over and over. But just because the brain is good at seeing patterns doesn't mean the pattern is meaningless. Sometimes the meaning isn't in the number. It's in the moment you saw it. You might see 111 when you're doubting yourself. You might catch 333 during a conversation you weren't fully present for. You might glimpse 555 just before you change your mind. The number doesn't change the moment, but it marks it. And in that marking, it changes you. You wake up for a beat. You see, some people ignore the numbers. Others follow them closely. Most sit in the middle. They don't worship digits, but they remember, because they've seen how often the numbers show up right before something changes, or right after. You don't have to believe in signs or spirits or codes. You just have to be awake enough to say, there it is again. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Or maybe it's a signal, not a map, but a rhythm, a quiet pulse in the background of your day. It doesn't tell you what to do, but it reminds you you're still watching, still listening, still part of something slightly larger than your routine. You're washing dishes. Your mind is drifting. You're not thinking of anything in particular, just letting the water run, letting your thoughts wander. Then, out of nowhere, you think of someone. Not someone you talk to often, not someone with a reason to call. An old friend, a cousin you only hear from once a year. Their face appears in your mind, clear, uninvited. You finish drying your hands, walk into the other room, and your phone lights up. It's them, calling. You freeze for a second, staring at the name. You whisper, "I just thought of you." And that moment, that feeling, doesn't go away. This happens to people constantly. You remember someone, and they text you 5 minutes later. You get a strange urge to check on someone. Your hand reaches for the phone, and it starts ringing. You look at an old photo, then that person emails you that same afternoon. You weren't expecting it. You didn't plan it, but it lined up perfectly. Some people brush it off. Coincidence. You think of hundreds of people every week. One of them was bound to reach out. But something about these moments feels different, too sharp, too specific. Not a vague memory, a clear image, a full name, a sudden awareness. Sometimes it's paired with emotion, a tension in the chest, a feeling that something is off, a sense that a message is coming. Then the phone lights up, and the name matches. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. You remember the hits, forget the misses. You thought of 20 people this week, only one called, the rest faded. But this one sticks. Still, the logic doesn't always explain the feel. People describe something else. They weren't flipping through names. They weren't scanning old texts. They were walking, cooking, doing laundry, and suddenly, that person appeared. Unprompted, unrelated. Then the call came. Same person, same moment. And it doesn't just happen with close friends. Sometimes, it's someone you haven't spoken to in years. Someone who's never called you before. Someone whose name shouldn't even be in your head. But it was. And that makes it harder to explain. There was no birthday coming. No event. No habit. No trigger. They were just there. And then, they were really there. On your screen. Some researchers tried to test this. Small studies. Parapsychology labs. Telepathy experiments. Person A thinks about person B. Person B writes down any mental impressions. Sometimes the guesses were more accurate than chance, but the sample sizes were small. The conclusions inconclusive. Mainstream science doesn't buy it. No proof, they say, that minds can transmit thoughts. No evidence we can sense the future. But maybe we don't need proof, because the experience doesn't ask for belief. It just happens, and it keeps happening. Some think it's emotional connection. You and the other person share a deep tie. Family, friendship, love. Your emotional states bleed into each other. When one of you feels lonely, anxious, happy, the other feels it without knowing why. The emotion stirs the thought. The thought stirs the action. They think of you. You think of them. The line connects. Others describe it as an energy exchange. Not scientific, just intuitive. You send out something when you think of someone, a signal. They receive it, or vice versa. They think of you, and somehow your brain catches the signal before your phone does. Then there's the cue theory. Maybe your brain saw their name on a screen, a split-second flash while scrolling, a notification you didn't register, a song that reminded you. Your conscious mind missed it, but your subconscious stored it. That turns into a thought, and it feels like intuition. But some stories go deeper. Someone wakes from a dream about a friend crying. Minutes later, that friend calls, in tears. Someone dreams of a phone buzzing, sees the name, and wakes to that exact call. The precision stretches coincidence. Some suggest it's a glitch in how we understand time. What if thought doesn't move in straight lines? What if the call already exists in the near future, and your mind picks up on the ripple? Not because of magic, but because time is softer than we think. Memory, awareness, intuition. They blur at the edges, and sometimes the signal arrives before the source. Others believe we're in a simulation, and in that system, events are preloaded. The program preps the incoming call by placing the thought in your mind first. Not spiritual, just procedural. Still uncanny, still real. No matter the theory, emotional, energetic, psychological, simulation-based, the shape stays the same. A quiet moment, a name, a feeling, then a buzz, a ring, a connection. You didn't know how, you just knew. Some act on the thought. They call first. Hey, I was just thinking about you. The other person says, I was about to message you. It becomes so frequent, they stop finding it strange. They start trusting the pattern. Others stay quiet. They answer the call, say nothing about the thought. But afterward, they sit in stillness and wonder. The world feels a little more responsive, a little more woven together. You put the phone down. You stare at the wall. You wonder how a stray thought became a voice, and why it didn't feel like a surprise. It felt like recognition. You buy something ordinary, a box of light bulbs, a kitchen tool, a pack of batteries. You bring it home, unwrap the shrink film, cut the tape, peel away the seal. The packaging is clean, untouched, like it came straight from the factory. You open the box, and there it is. Tucked between molded foam or plastic trays sits a coin. Not new, not shiny, worn, old. A penny from the 1970s, maybe even earlier. You pick it up, turn it over. It's real, tarnished, used, familiar in a way that makes it feel like it doesn't belong. The product is new. The seal was flawless. No tampering, no openings, no loose edges or strange folds. Yet here's a coin older than the product itself by half a century. You search online. You try to find stories. Anyone else who found the same thing? No one has. Just you. It's not rare, not valuable. That's not the point. It's out of context. And that's what pulls at your mind. You try to explain it. Maybe someone at the factory dropped it in. Maybe an accident on the assembly line. But modern production is automated. Machines guide each step. Items move from conveyor to container, then to shrink wrap, then to shipping, all untouched by human hands. No one had the time or opportunity to slide in a decades-old coin. Even if they did, why that coin? Why something so old, so unrelated, so precisely wrong? Why not a screw, a barcode, a sticker? Why a physical relic from another era entirely? Other stories emerge. Someone buys a brand new notebook. Inside, tucked between crisp pages, is a Polaroid photo. Faded, curled, unmistakably aged. A backyard scene. A kitchen table. Two strangers standing beside an old car. Nothing disturbing, just real. A captured moment from decades ago, not staged, not artificial, not printed on new stock. Another person unboxes a sealed lamp and finds an instruction manual for a model discontinued in the 80s. Someone else opens a phone case and under the plastic insert, a folded movie ticket from 1993. Still others find a grocery receipt from 1986, a train stub from the past, a postcard never written on, but already yellowed with age. None of these are frightening. None are dramatic. They're quiet, small, but precise. They defy the one thing we're taught to trust, the line between past and present. We expect time to be a one-way street, linear, logical, layered cleanly. But these objects, they feel like folded corners. One common theory? Returned merchandise. Someone bought it, tampered with it, added the item, then returned it. Now it's back on the shelf, resealed, resold. Simple. But in most cases, the packaging was intact. Tamper-proof stickers unbroken. Factory glue still smooth. Shrink wrap flush and tight. Even the object itself wasn't casual. A coin from 1969 isn't something you carry anymore. Not something that slides in unnoticed. The more you try to explain it, the less it makes sense. Maybe recycled materials? Old factory bins or trays? Possibly. But if that were the case, we'd see far more of it. More strange objects, more clutter, more noise. But the stories people tell aren't noisy. They're pointed, too specific, too clean, too deliberate to be error. It's not the presence of junk. It's the presence of memory. And then there are the personal ones. A woman receives a sealed journal. Inside, a folded note. The handwriting looks eerily like her grandfather's. Not exactly, but close enough to sting. No name, no date, just a phrase he used to say. Another person finds a toy coin from the year they were born inside a modern box set with no reference to that year, no mention in the ad, no tie-in to a vintage collection. Just there. People begin treating these objects not as mistakes, but as messages. Not from spirits, not from companies, from somewhere, something. A subtle reminder, a pause, a moment meant to interrupt. You stop asking, "How did this happen?" and start asking, "Why now?" What were you thinking? What did you forget? What did this object trigger in you that no modern thing could? It becomes less about belief and more about attention. The object shifts your mind. It bends your linear logic. It says, "Look again." Some go further. They see these objects as glitches, not dramatic Matrix-style errors, but small tears in the fabric of consistency. A ripple, a skipped frame, an accidental copy-paste from one part of the timeline into another, a duplicated asset. If a 1973 coin shows up in a 2024 sealed box, maybe the world reused a small piece of data from the wrong layer, not because of mystery, but because something slipped. And that feeling, that slip, can't be measured. It just is. You don't panic. You don't feel fear. You feel pause. Like time tilted and something fell through. You don't mention it often. If you tell someone, they say, "Probably a return. Factory glitch. Some kid playing a prank." You nod. But inside, you know none of it fits. You were there. You opened it. You felt it before you even saw it. The seal was tight. The moment was wrong. But the object was real. And now, it's yours. You keep it. Not because it's worth anything, because it happened. A half-century-old coin inside factory plastic and modern foam. Nothing valuable, nothing magical. Just two moments in time folded together. Long enough for you to see, and long enough to make you wonder what else might be hiding in the layers between. You're walking through a mall or down a busy street. Voices blur into each other. Footsteps click. Music leaks from store speakers. Engines hum in the background. You're not really listening. Your mind is elsewhere. Then, you hear it. Your name, spoken clearly, just above the noise. Not shouted, not whispered, just enough to cut through the static of the world. You freeze, turn your head, scan the faces around you. No one is looking your way. No one is talking to you. You pause, then keep walking, a little more aware, a little more unsettled. It happens again. Not in a crowd this time. You're alone. In the kitchen, folding laundry, washing your hands. No music, no devices, no background sounds. Then, you hear it again, your name, from behind you, or another room. It's not a whisper, not hostile, just familiar, like someone trying gently to get your attention. You look around, open the door, check the hallway. Nothing. You play it back in your mind. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't imagined. It had tone. It had shape. The outline of a voice you can't quite place. You were sure. And then, silence. This happens to many people. Different settings, different times. But always the same reaction. Pause. Confusion. A deep sense of scanning for something that isn't there. It feels personal. Your name isn't just another word. Your brain is trained to respond to it, instantly. Even in deep sleep, a parent will wake if someone says their name. Even in chaos, you hear it, because you're wired for it. There is a scientific explanation. It's called phantom hearing, or auditory pareidolia. Your brain is a pattern machine. It scans background noise, fans, traffic, distant voices, searching for shapes in sound. Sometimes it hears just enough to suggest a name, and it fills in the rest. Because your name is the most attention-sensitive pattern in your entire mental database. You don't even need full syllables, just a fragment of a vowel, a consonant in the right place. And suddenly, your mind says, "That was me." It's not trickery. It's not illness. It's your brain doing what it always does, interpreting fragments as familiar meaning. Crowds amplify this. Dozens of voices overlapping and layered create unpredictable echoes. One person says something with a soft A. Another says a word with a sharp K. Together, it fuses into something that sounds like your name. You hear it. You look. Nothing. But your brain was listening, as it always is. The same can happen when you're home alone. Pipes groaning, refrigerators buzzing, wind sliding through narrow gaps. These sounds have rhythm. Your auditory cortex analyzes them for speech-like structures. And sometimes, it finds one. You're calm, unoccupied, maybe in a light trance. Your brain fills the quiet with something that feels like a voice. Sometimes, it's called a hypnagogic hallucination, a sound heard just before sleep, when you're drifting but not dreaming. In that half state, you might hear knocking, footsteps, voices, just your name. But what if you're wide awake, focused, working, nowhere near sleep, and you still hear it? That's where things get harder to explain. In folklore, hearing your name with no speaker was always seen as a sign. In some cultures, it means someone is thinking of you. In others, it's a warning, not to respond. Because names, in ancient traditions, held power. To speak someone's name wasn't just communication, it was connection. Even now, some people hesitate. They hear their name. They don't answer. They wait. Instinct whispers, "Don't speak. Don't respond." Not out of fear, but caution. as if replying opens a door to something unknown, something just out of reach. Other people think the voice is internal, not supernatural, not external, but a kind of internal checkpoint, a signal. Your brain saying, "Come back." You've been distracted, ignoring something, and so it whispers your name to refocus your attention, like a hand tapping your shoulder from inside your skull. Still, some reports are stranger. People hear the same voice in the same room over and over, sometimes 3 times. 4. Always in quiet, always when alone, always their name. It becomes a pattern, not a threat, but something persistent and strangely comforting. They say it feels like a presence, like someone checking in, not a haunting, but a soft reminder. You're not as alone as you think. You don't talk about it often. It's hard to explain without sounding strange. But you remember the moment, how clear it was, how it pulled you out of whatever you were doing, how it felt real, and then vanished, leaving a silence that felt somehow louder. And from then on, you listen, just in case it happens again. You pause, glance behind, and ask, "Who just called me?" 9 minutes. That's all it took. You sit there, confused. You didn't speed. You didn't hit every green light. You didn't skip any major turns. The drive felt normal, unremarkable. And yet, the math doesn't work. It was a 35-minute route, but you arrived in under 10. You checked the time again. Maybe you misread your watch earlier. Maybe the car clock's off. But something feels off. Not just the numbers, the moment itself. It doesn't sit right. Then it happens again. Another day, another place, same pattern. Only this time, it's reversed. You glance at the clock, 9:20 p.m. You answer a message, reply to a few emails, scroll briefly, nothing major. 20 minutes pass, maybe. You look up. It's 12:03 a.m. You didn't fall asleep. You weren't zoned out. You were present, awake. But the hours are gone, and you can't tell where they went. Sometimes it's not a skip, it's a loop. You enter a store, the music playing, familiar, a song you heard earlier. You pass an aisle. A kid in a red jacket walks by holding a yellow snack bag. You keep walking. Then, you pass the same aisle again. The same kid. The same snack. You check your phone. Same minute. No notifications. No progress. For a moment, everything feels stuck. Repeating. Then the spell breaks. Time moves again. People describe this sensation in different ways, but the core feeling is the same. Discontinuity, a mismatch between experience and time. The numbers say one thing, but your body says another. Some of this has explanations. The brain doesn't measure time by ticking clocks. It measures it by attention and memory. When you're focused, reading, writing, immersed, your internal clock slows. You only remember the highlights. Time feels short. But when you're bored, anxious, waiting, your brain encodes every second. Time stretches. Still, that doesn't explain everything, because these time slips don't always follow that logic. You weren't focused. You weren't distracted. You were alert, present, watching the moment unfold, and it still felt wrong. There's a name for some of it: temporal distortion. It happens under stress, in dreams, in altered states of consciousness. People in car accidents often say time slowed down. Every detail sharpened. A few seconds felt like forever. But clocks don't lie. It was fast. The mind stretched the moment. Other times, it compresses. Drivers on long, familiar roads sometimes arrive with no memory of the trip. That's called highway hypnosis. You weren't asleep, just operating on autopilot. Your brain skipped encoding the routine. So when you try to recall it, there's nothing there. But what about when even the math breaks? You leave at 4 o'clock. You arrive at 4:09. Maps say it takes 28 minutes. Your logs show no traffic, no detours, speed normal, route unchanged. Yet somehow, 19 minutes are gone, not from memory, from the timeline. That's not perception. That's discrepancy. That's when the experience moves from psychology to the uncanny. Some people call these moments time slips, not lapses in focus, but literal breaks in how time flows, as if you stepped into a pocket of warped reality. You didn't go faster. Time just behaved differently. The route didn't change. The duration did. You try to recreate it, but you can't, because time doesn't rewind. All you have is the memory of smooth motion, no interruptions, no mistakes. And that is what makes it strange. If something had happened, you could blame the shift, but it was too normal, almost sterile. Like time folded itself quietly and handed you a shortcut. There are cases where multiple people notice it together. 2 coworkers leave at the same time. Same road, same speed. One arrives 15 minutes ahead. No stops, no traffic, no difference, except time. Or the stranger reports. People walking home who hear a strange sound, a hum, a tone, a flash of light, and then find themselves somewhere else. Hours gone. They aren't tired. They aren't hungry. Their watches stop working during the event. Start again after. No memory of what filled the gap. These are the extreme ends. Most loops are smaller, fleeting, a minute that repeats, a hallway that feels too familiar, a store that looks identical to how you last saw it, customer placement and all. You think, didn't I just do this? Sometimes the moment repeats perfectly. You hear the same floor creak, smell the same faint scent, soap, bread, warmth. You turn a corner, and it starts again. Same creak, same light, same motion. Not similar, identical. Then, something breaks the loop. A sneeze, a slammed door, a voice. The pattern ends, but the memory remains. You try to describe it, but it doesn't fit into words. Not clearly, not cleanly. Because time is supposed to be stable, linear, predictable. And when it bends, you don't just lose minutes. You lose certainty. You start wondering if the clock measures reality or just the version you've been given. You make it to the meeting. You meet the deadline. But something inside you knows. The way you got there wasn't entirely normal. You traveled the usual road. But something inside that road changed, quietly, briefly, just long enough for you to notice, and you wonder, has it happened before? Will it happen again? You're standing in front of the mirror, doing something ordinary, brushing your teeth, adjusting your shirt, running fingers through your hair. Then, just for a moment, something feels off. You turn your head slightly, and the reflection hesitates. Or worse, it moves first. You blink, and your mirrored self seems to blink before you do. You lift your hand, and the motion doesn't quite match. It's not reversed. It's delayed, or too quick. A split-second disconnect. Small, but sharp enough to stop you. You freeze, staring straight into your own eyes, waiting for it to happen again. But now, everything is back to normal. Your reflection follows perfectly. Every move mirrored. No delay. No flicker. You shake your head. Tell yourself it was nothing. Maybe your eyes shifted for a moment. Maybe you looked away. Maybe your brain filled in the gap. But even as you walk away, a thought lingers. I didn't move like that. People describe this phenomenon in many different ways. Some say the reflection was off, a fraction of a second late. Others say it moved too soon, or tilted its head the wrong way. Some report their reflection's mouth twitching, subtly, in a way their real mouth didn't. Or the eyes, seeming to watch, not reflect, not mimicry, observation. It's quick, a flicker, but unsettling. There are grounded explanations. Your brain constantly predicts your movements, even before you make them. That prediction keeps your muscles, your vision, and your balance coordinated. But when you're tired, distracted, or under stress, that internal model glitches. What you think you saw and what actually happened fall slightly out of sync. The delay isn't in the mirror, it's in your mind. Lighting plays tricks too. Uneven bulbs, shadowy corners, a smudge on the glass. All of it can distort reflection just enough to register as wrong. A hand under overhead light may flicker or bend strangely. Combine that with a moment of blurred focus, and your brain says, something's not right. In some cases, this links to derealization, a temporary state where reality feels distant. Nothing is wrong exactly, but everything feels wrong. Mirrors, being so precise, become the perfect trigger. You expect them to behave. So when they don't, your sense of trust fractures. There's also a known effect, the strange face illusion. If you stare into your eyes in a dim mirror for over a minute, your facial features may morph, shift, blur, change. It's not magic. It's how your brain deals with low stimulation. When there's not enough detail, it fills in the blanks, sometimes too well. It creates movement where none exists, emotion where none was felt. But here's the catch. Most mirror mismatches don't happen in low light. They happen in bright bathrooms, hallways, well-lit bedrooms, when you're doing nothing mystical, just fixing your collar, checking for toothpaste, tilting your head. Then, the reflection doesn't follow quite right. It's not like a slow webcam delay. It's faster, sharper. The shift breaks something more than visual. It breaks assumption. The belief that the mirror is a perfect twin, always accurate, always instant. Once that trust breaks, you can't help but test it. Raise your hand, smile, frown, wave, nod. Everything syncs up again. But now, you're watching closer. Some people report it happening repeatedly, always quick, always unprovable. You tell a friend, and they say, "You imagined it." And you agree. What else could it be? Still, you keep testing, keep looking, because part of you knows what you saw. There are stranger accounts too. People who say their reflection smiled first, or frowned while they were feeling fine, or tilted the wrong way, left when you moved right, just once, just for a second. You blinked, and it was gone, but not from memory. And that's where folklore begins. In older cultures, mirrors were not just tools. They were portals. Mourning rituals often involved covering mirrors, not out of superstition, but because reflections were believed to trap the soul. Even now, people report feeling watched by their own image, not watched by themselves, watched by something using their shape. Psychologically, the mirror is uncanny. You see yourself, but reversed. Your right hand is their left. You're close, but not the same. That subtle reversal creates tension, a microscopic dissonance, especially if your mind isn't fully grounded. If your sense of self is a little foggy, the reflection can feel like someone else. Some people believe that's exactly what it is. Not just a reflection, but a copy, a version of you on the other side. Most of the time, the copy mirrors you, but every once in a while, it glitches. Not to harm, just a moment of misalignment. And if you notice, that means the veil slipped. For a second, it forgot which side it was on. You don't have to believe in portals or simulations to feel it. You just need that moment, that half second where your body moved but your image didn't. That flicker when you weren't sure who led and who followed. That blink where you thought, "That didn't feel like me." And maybe it wasn't. Or maybe it was you seen from the wrong side of a moment that doesn't always obey the rules. You look again. Everything's normal. The mirror smiles when you smile, frowns when you frown. All is well. But deep down, you remember the flicker, not what happened, just how it felt. You're mid-conversation with a friend. Nothing serious. Just a relaxed, easy exchange. You're talking about something familiar, a topic you've covered before. And then, it happens. Both of you, at the exact same moment, say the same sentence. But not a cliché. Not, "It is what it is," or, "At the end of the day." No. You both say something strange, odd, specific. Something neither of you has said in years, maybe ever. A phrase from childhood, a metaphor so bizarre it feels made up. Slippery as a buttered eel. Same words, same tone, same timing. And then, silence. You both freeze. One of you says, "How did we just say that?" This kind of glitch, this perfect speech sync, happens more often than we realize. It's not like finishing each other's sentences. That's normal, expected. This is different. This is two minds generating the same weird, obscure phrase at the exact same time without any cue. No one hinted at it. It wasn't trending. It wasn't on your mind. It just arrived, synchronized. Sometimes it happens mid-thought. Other times, during a pause. You're both reflecting, silent for a second. Then, like an echo from two mouths at once, a sentence neither of you planned emerges. Together, you try to explain it away. Maybe one of you said it first. Maybe the other repeated it half a second later. But that's not how it felt. It felt simultaneous, like one shared voice split between two bodies. And neither of you remembers starting the thought. There's a neurological explanation for some of this. People who spend a lot of time together, friends, partners, co-workers, begin to sync up. It's called neural coupling. Over time, you adopt each other's rhythms, speech patterns, even vocabulary. Your brains begin to predict each other. That's why you can finish each other's sentences. But that doesn't explain the strange ones, the impossible syncs, the weird metaphors, the invented phrases. You weren't talking about animals, but suddenly you both say, like putting mittens on a snake. Where did that come from? Memory is messy. It makes strange associations. A smell, a rhythm, a sound. They can all bring up forgotten phrases. But for two people to retrieve the same forgotten phrase at the same moment, that's harder to explain. Some say it's unnoticed priming. Maybe you both heard the phrase earlier in the day, a podcast, a radio jingle, a passing comment, and your brains filed it away. Then, in a moment of emotional sync, laughter, awkwardness, tension, the memory floated up. The same memory. At the same time. Your emotions aligned. Your timing aligned. The phrase landed in both minds at once. That's neat, clean, scientific. But it doesn't explain everything. Sometimes the phrase isn't real. It's nonsense. You both say something like, "That's a tuner in the glove box." It doesn't mean anything. You've never heard it before. Yet you both say it. Together. Same moment. Same inflection. Like it was part of a script you never wrote. You both laugh. Try to retrace it. Where did it come from? Nowhere. Some people joke, it's telepathy. Not in a supernatural way, but in the way two minds can tune to the same frequency without speaking. No one sent the thought. No one received it. You just arrived at the same mental intersection at the same moment and spoke. Others call it a simulation glitch, like the code forgot to randomize. And so, the same line of dialogue played from two mouths at once. A copy-paste error in reality. Not proof, not science, but something slipped. For a moment, you were two instances of the same character in the same scene. You've also got psychology to fall back on. In group settings, ceremonies, dance, rituals, people enter shared mental states. Their brains fall into rhythm. Speech, movement, emotion, all aligned. It's called entrainment. But shared speech glitches don't just happen in rituals. They happen in kitchens, in living rooms, on walks, during text exchanges, normal moments, casual chats, and suddenly, a phrase drops in. Together. Some friends experience it constantly. They don't go a week without syncing up in speech. Some couples report dreaming the same dream, saying the same words without planning. They weren't trying to. It just arrived, as if the sentence was waiting in the air, like static you both tuned into at the same instant. Most people shrug it off, laugh, move on. But if it keeps happening, you start to wonder. You look for patterns. Were we talking about something specific? Did the phrase mean something? Was it a message? Or just noise? Sometimes it meant nothing. A verbal hiccup. An absurd, shared moment. But the synchronicity, that part was real. It wasn't about the phrase. It was about the timing, the alignment. Not just words, but rhythm, thought, impulse. Two minds acting as one without instruction. You don't need to explain it to feel the chill. You just remember it, clearly. That eerie, perfect moment where a sentence that wasn't planned came out in perfect harmony. You both look at each other, you laugh, then pause and ask, how did we know to say that? You're walking alone, nothing unusual, just a quiet street or a forest path. Then you see it, a dog across the road, standing completely still, not sniffing, not moving, just staring. Its head slightly tilted, eyes locked, not blinking. You pause, expecting it to bark or turn away. But it doesn't. The air thickens. You glance around, but nothing else seems strange. Only the animal, motionless, like it's watching something you can't see. This happens with more than just dogs. Cats freeze mid-step, ears perked toward nothing. Horses stop chewing. Cows lift their heads. Birds go silent all at once, then suddenly take off together. You try to rationalize it. Maybe a scent, a predator, a car you can't hear yet. But sometimes the animal is indoors, with you. No threats, no noises, and it just stares, not at a window, not at a sound, but at the wall, the corner, the ceiling, the space behind you. Their eyes track something. Their heads follow movement. But you see nothing. Some say animals are just wired differently, more sensitive to smell, to vibration, to high-frequency sounds. That's why dogs bark at empty staircases, or cats chase invisible specks in the air. Science says it's instinct, a reaction to patterns you're not wired to detect, a shape in the wind, a shift in barometric pressure, a memory trigger that causes alertness. But that doesn't explain the stillness, the depth of the gaze, the eerie precision, like they're seeing through, not just at. In folklore, this behavior means more. Animals see spirits, entities, energies that humans have long forgotten how to sense. They aren't reacting to nothing. They're recognizing presence. An old belief says if your pet stares at a door or a corner for too long, something is trying to come through. Not always malicious, just curious or lost. But the animal knows, and it pauses to see if it's safe. Others believe animals detect shifts in timelines. That moment when reality hiccups and you don't notice, but they do. They freeze because something skipped, a second looped, a scene rewound. You keep walking, but the animal stops, like it's waiting for the glitch to settle. Some report chilling details. A cat watching the same corner at the same time every night. A dog growling at the wall exactly when a family member felt a cold breeze. Indoors, with all the windows shut. You try to dismiss it, but the animal won't break its gaze, and that's when your mind shifts. You stop thinking, "What are they looking at?" and start thinking, "What aren't I seeing?" In that quiet, you realize something. They're not scared. They're alert. Not barking, not panicking. They're aware. And somehow, you feel it too. Just a flicker, a low hum, a sense that something is near, but not quite here. Then, they blink, stretch, move on, and the room returns to normal. But you don't. You remember. Because when the animal froze, so did time, and something in the silence looked back at you. You remember something vividly, not a blur, not a dream, a clear memory, with detail, texture, emotion, the way the air smelled, the song that played, the words someone said just before they turned the corner. You're sure it happened, but when you bring it up, no one else remembers. Your friend looks confused. Your sibling shakes their head. That never happened. We weren't even there. That place doesn't exist. So you check. Old messages, photos, maps, nothing matches. You scroll through evidence, expecting proof, but instead, you find silence. Still, you remember it. Deeply, viscerally, like a scar you can't see but still feel when it rains. These are phantom memories. They arrive like truth and sit beside your real past, unbothered by contradiction. Not misremembered, not confused, just unprovable. Science offers some clues. Memories aren't files, they're reconstructions. Every time you recall one, your brain rewrites it, adds detail, shifts context, fills in gaps with logic, emotion, expectation. So a memory that started real can slowly drift until it becomes part fiction. But phantom memories are different. They often come fully formed. No blending, no fade, just a whole scene, as if dropped into your mind from nowhere. Some are harmless. You swear you visited a town that no one else remembers. You describe a house that was never built. You recall a childhood trip with a cousin who wasn't born yet. Other times, they're heavy. You remember an argument that didn't happen, a betrayal that no one else recalls, a goodbye you're sure was said, even though the person denies it. The memory aches as if it left a bruise. But the timeline says you're wrong. Some call these false memories. Some call them confabulations. But others suggest they're bleed-throughs, echoes from other versions of you, paths you almost lived, timelines that branched but left residue behind. Maybe you did have that conversation, just not in this thread of time. Maybe that town exists, just not on this map. Some theories propose we dream of other lives, and sometimes the dream sticks. We wake and carry fragments into this reality, not as dreams, but as memories. Real enough to grieve, real enough to shape how we act, who we trust, what we fear. There are people who live entire relationships in their memory, marriages that never happened, friendships that never began. They don't believe they imagined it. They believe they touched another layer. And maybe, so did you. You remember a road you've never driven. You recall the smell of rain on a balcony you've never stood on. The ache of missing someone you've never met. These moments don't fit anywhere in your timeline, but they fit you. They belong somewhere just out of reach. You don't speak of them often. You know what people say. Maybe you dreamed it. Maybe it's just deja vu. Maybe your brain filled in a blank. And maybe it did. Or maybe the memory is real, just not real here. So you keep it, tucked in a quiet corner, a map to a place no one else can find. You carry it like a secret, not because it's false, but because it's yours. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, you visit it again. You step into that memory as if through a door that only opens once. You stand in the familiar light of a moment that never was, but always will be.